Chair, Carlos has asked me to make a couple announcements regarding the interpretation when you're ready to begin.
Let's do that, and then we'll formally begin after you make those announcements.
Okay. We do have Spanish interpretation, and we are asking everyone to locate the icon at the bottom of the screen that looks like a world that will give you the languages. So we have English and we have Spanish. So please select your language of choice, and everyone should be on one of those two channels, either English or Spanish. Presently, Carlos is on the Spanish channel, interpreting what I am saying in Spanish. Those who choose to speak during public comment and are speaking in Spanish, we ask that you make a few statements and then pause and allow for Carlos, our interpreter, to switch to the English channel so we can all hear the interpretation. So we're going to ask that those Spanish speakers, please, when they're making their comments, to make a statement, then pause, and make a statement, and then pause. So at this point, I'd like to ask Carlos, our interpreter, to now speak so that he can also make any announcements on the English channel for us. Thank you.
Give him just a moment to do that. Okay, let's begin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Glenn Morris. I have the honor of being the chair of the Santa Barbara County Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And it is my duty at this point to call our meeting of June 2nd to order at 6 p.m. Ms. Tilton, could you begin with a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Trotsky, 1st District.
Present.
1st District, Commissioner Twibell.
Present.
2nd District, Commissioner McClintock.
Present.
2nd District, Vice Chair Turley.
Present.
2nd District, or I'm sorry, 3rd District, Commissioner Bradley.
Present.
We have a vacancy in the 3rd District. 4th District, Commissioner Bray.
Present.
4th District, Commissioner Ochoa.
Present.
5th District, Commissioner Rios.
Present.
Okay, good. You just texted that you were having some difficulty, but you're sounding perfect. And member at large, Commissioner Adams. And I think that you may have been muted.
My apologies, present.
And Chair, 5th District Chair Morris.
Present. Thank you. So we have everybody here this evening, so we can move forward. Items 2 and 3 on the agenda are informational and would direct the attention of our guests and the public to the county's website, where you can find a link to the ex parte communication reports submitted by each member of the commission. as well as a form to share contact information or suggestions for community organizations that the commission should be contacting as part of our outreach effort. Those links can both be found on the redistricting website on the county's website. And soon they'll be on the commission's website as well, which we'll get to a little bit later this evening. Our next item on the agenda is our public comment period. Before I ask Ms. Tilton to explain the procedure and take us through those who wish to make comment, I would remind those in the audience that this particular session of public comment is intended for items not on the agenda later this evening. We will take public comment as we work through each item. So this would be general public comment, and would ask in particular that speakers refrain from making comments in support or opposition to candidates who may or may not be interviewed later this evening until such time as the commission has had a chance to conduct those interviews. With that, Ms. Tilton, can you explain to folks how we handle public comment and invite those who wish to make comment to do so?
Today's meeting is remote, virtual only through the Zoom webinar information identified on the public agenda. The meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the internet at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc. Public participation during the meeting can only be done through the Zoom webinar link or by calling the phone number provided on the agenda. For those using the Zoom webinar link, please indicate that you wish to speak during public comment by selecting the raise your hand feature. Attendees by phone can raise your hand by pressing *9. When called upon, please state your name for the record. And we reserve the right to mute a microphone for profane, harassing, or offensive language, or for speaking beyond the time limit set. The time limit for public comment is set at 3 minutes. Recordings of the commission meetings, agendas, supplemental materials, and minutes of the commission are available on the internet at the same redistricting webpage cited earlier at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc.
Very well. And do we have any hands raised to make public comment at this time?
Yes, we have a request to speak by Gerardo Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mr. Gonzalez.
Muy buenas tardes. ¿Me escuchan? Gracias. Okay. Según la ordenanza, la comisión necesita representación latina y como una comisión independiente, la representación étnica y regional debe pesar más que la política partidista. Esta es la voluntad de los votantes y hasta este punto parece que la comisión está ignorando esos deseos. Bueno, según la ordenanza, la comisión necesita representación latina. Y como una comisión independiente, la representación étnica y regional debe pesar más que la política partidista. Esta es la voluntad de los votantes y hasta este punto parece que la comisión está ignorando ese deseo y voto de los pueblos del condado. Gracias.
Thank you.
Chair Morris, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. And I do have some public written comment. Oh, we did get it. We do have a hand raised by Jeannie Ponce.
Good evening, Ms. Ponce. Ms. Ponce, if you could
Okay.
unmute yourself.
Okay,
There we
sorry
go.
about that.
No worries.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I came to Guadalupe on a promotion to the U.S. master position in Guadalupe in 1983. And since I've been here, we've been on the 5th district, the 4th district, and the 3rd district. You know, we're currently in the 3rd district. I've been on the Juvenile Justice Commission, the Women's Commission, the Children's Commission, the Kiwanis, the Comité Cívico, anything that I had to get on to help and support the community of Guadalupe, I've been here and to help, because that was what I was sent to. The term was clean up, because I knew all the financial things that needed to be going on at the post office. But besides that, I just want to say that throughout that time, I never served on, well, I did serve, I can't even remember. I'm getting up there in age. I retired in 2007, but there's never been any commission or anything that I've been on. And yes, I served with Lupe Alvarez, and he's the most fairest, honest, he listens, and accountable person that I know of. I can't think of anybody better to represent our county, our 3rd district, than Lupe. I just want to let everybody know that I supported him, and no matter what is going on in Guadalupe, he asked, Jeannie, what can I do to help? Any way possible, whether it's digging ditches, you know, supporting financially, whatever. And I took offense to them calling him a slum landlord, because if it wasn't for him, we had no, when I came here, it was not, we had an attorney that owned the post office through a lease, I should say, and we rented, and the facility had never been painted. It was supposed to be painted every 5 years. As soon as the Alvarez family bought it, not only did they paint, but they took all the windows with the asbestos, cleaned up everything. But he's there for anybody in Guadalupe, and I just think him being the only Hispanic, that it should be like a no-brainer that we should have a Hispanic that knows our city and county, and nobody knows it better, because he's been on the city council, he's been on numerous commissions, and I totally endorse him. The council endorses him currently, and I wish you would take his name into consideration for this commission. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Jesus Morales, followed by Juan Garcia, and then Lee Heller.
Good evening, Mr. Morales.
Buenas tardes. ¿Listo? ¿Se me pueden escuchar? ¿Hello? ¿Me puede escuchar? Para mí es falta de respeto que la comisión no quiera a un latino que tiene todas las habilidades y calificaciones para el puesto. Lupe Alvarez es la opción clara y representará muy bien el condado. Necesitamos la representación de hispanos en la comisión. Por favor, háganle caso a los votantes y seleccionen a Lupe Alvarez. Gracias.
Thank you. Before our next speaker, can I just again remind folks that right now we're looking for public comment that is not related to items that are on our agenda this evening. We will have time, in this case, after we conduct the interviews of the candidates, to have public comment in support or opposition of individual candidates before the commission makes a decision. With that said, is there anyone in the public who wishes to make a comment not related to the appointment of a new commissioner this evening?
I have
Sorry, I know I'm out of order. Should I say that in Spanish or did the interpreter?
The interpreter should be getting that now.
Okay.
We have Lee Heller followed by Andy Caldwell.
Evening, Ms. Heller. Dr. Heller.
Chair Morris, thank you. I am just reinforcing what you responded to that I put in the chat, that it would be great to enforce the rule since it delays the meeting and doesn't address the fact that we're only supposed to comment after we've heard interviews, because otherwise, what's the point? So thank you for that, and I hope you will enforce.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Andy Caldwell.
Good evening, Mr. Caldwell.
Good evening, Chair Morris, members of the commission. I don't know if I was supposed to do this, but I used your chat button to ask a question. I thought that Shalice mentioned at the beginning that you were going to have the Spanish interpreter come in and interpret the speakers. I think they should do that right after they speak. So I think we've had two or three of them on, and there's been no interpretation over the English language feed. I thought that if you have somebody speaking Spanish, that what she said is the interpreter was going to come back in and interpret for us, as Commissioner Rios so graciously did a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, so Mr. Caldwell, if I could, as we explained at the beginning, at the bottom of your screen, there's a button there that will allow you to choose the channel you wish to hear speakers in that language. The translator is translating on when there's a Spanish speaker, he is translating on the English channel. So if your selection is still original language, you will not hear him. But if you go to that glow button and choose English, you would have heard him. He did interpret the two previous speakers.
So which one do you have to click English?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes.
I didn't understand that. Thank you.
Yep. No, we're all learning. We're figuring this
All right.
out. Hopefully just in time to stop using it, but we're going to get it figured out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms.
We have
Tilton,
a-
any other speakers?
Yes, we have a request to speak from Gerald DeWitt.
Mr. DeWitt.
I'm sorry, we're switching over to the English language channel, and apparently I did not intend to push the request to speak button.
Very well. Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Tilton, do we have any written correspondence this evening? You're muted again. Sorry.
We do have written correspondence. The first was received May 24th from Sadie Stern regarding designating land of the coastal First Nation as sovereign in the map. We have on May 31st from Garrett Matsura in support of Lupe Alvarez. We have written comment from Lee Heller on May 31st requesting Kevin Kasich be considered a candidate for the third vacancy. We have correspondence from Spencer Brandt on May 31st regarding a news article from the Santa Maria Sun quoting Lupe Alvarez as supporting a seated county supervisor. We have correspondence from Lata Merte on June 1st requesting Kevin Kasich be interviewed as a candidate for the third district vacancy. And Chair Morris, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to just make some clarification regarding the Kevin Kasich.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Kasich was scheduled to interview on May 19th, and on May 14th, we received an email from him saying, I've given the opportunity some further thought and decided to remove my name from consideration. Based on that statement, I did set up the interviews initially for tonight and did not contact Mr. Kasich based on that comment. Fortunately, he did contact us since, and on May 31st, he recognized that he is interested in being interviewed and is available to interview. So for that reason, we were able to accommodate and have Mr. Kasich available for interview by scheduling a special meeting. The special meeting was noticed in 24 hours in advance as required by the Brown Act. And what will happen is we will conduct the interviews on the regular agenda. We'll recess the regular agenda, open up the special meeting, conduct that special meeting. The sole item on that agenda is Mr. Kasich's interview, close that meeting and reconvene the regular meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that for to both address those comments and to help to bring clarity to why there was a special meeting that was called.
Well, and thank you, because you just answered my question, which is what's the procedure for doing that? So thank you for that. Okay, with those items in the noted, we will move on our agenda. And let me just as a point for the commissioners, this evening, instead of being on a large screen, I'm working off of an iPad, so I can't see you all simultaneously. So commissioners, if I could ask you, when you need to speak, if you would use the raise hand button on there as well, so that I can make sure I don't miss somebody this evening. So with that, we need to approve the minutes for our May 12th and May 19th meetings. If there are any corrections, we would take those now. If not, we would look for a motion to accept those two documents into the record. Commissioner Turley, are you making the motion?
Yes, I will motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Very well. Commissioner Bradley, I saw your hand come up next. Are you seconding?
Yes, sir. I'll second.
Thank you very much. Could we do a roll call on that, please, Ms. Tilton?
Yes, Commissioner Trotsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Twibell,
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock,
Aye.
Commissioner Turley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ochoa,
Aye.
Commissioner Rios,
Aye.
Commissioner Adams,
Aye.
Chair Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Next on our agenda is an item to acknowledge and accept a resignation previously submitted by Commissioner Olmedo. Is there somebody who would like to make that motion? Commissioner Rios, I see your hand.
I make a motion to accept the resignation letter of our previous commissioner, Ben Almedo.
Thank you. Is there a second to that? Commissioner McClintock, thank you. All right, Ms. Tilton will take that roll call as well.
Yes, Commissioner Trotsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Twibell,
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock,
Aye.
Commissioner Turley,
Aye with deep regret.
Commissioner Bradley,
Very woefully aye.
Commissioner Bray,
Aye with regret as well.
Commissioner Ochoa.
Aye.
Commissioner Rios,
With regret. Aye.
Commissioner Adams,
Aye.
and Chair Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very well. We'll turn our attention now to the interviews for the open seat on the commission from the 3rd District. And commissioners, I'm going to ask again that those of you who asked the questions in our last session, if you'd be so kind as to do that again this evening. Our first candidate this evening will be Albert Byerly, if I'm saying that name correctly. Is he present and available? Very well. Mr. Byerly, if you would be so kind to make sure your mic is open and your camera on, and just briefly introduce yourself to the commission.
Hi, I'm Al Byerly, live in Goleta. Been here in the county a long time.
Very well, sir. So we're going to go through a series of 5 questions. You should have been given those questions in advance. Different commissioners will pose those. You'll have about 3 minutes to answer each question, and then we'll go to that point. So who has the first question?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And good evening, Mr. Byerly, and welcome. First question, why do you want to serve on the Redistricting Commission?
I want to serve because I think voting is important. And I think it's important that everybody's vote gets counted equitably, gets a chance to vote. I'm not a political being. And I think my best efforts are doing work that are not political, but more technical. I see this is more a technical kind of a job than a political job. I was in the Sierra Club some years ago. And at one time I was the Santa Barbara area delegate to the Southern California region. At the same time, I coordinated trail maintenance. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed the trail maintenance a lot more because I felt like I was doing something useful and it was not political. That's it.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My question for you is, given the commission's current members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background, experiences, skills, and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
I don't know anything about anybody on the commission, any of the current members. I was an experimental physicist, so my professional skills are digesting large data sets. I have a good understanding of statistics. So I think I can help with the analysis to sort out what's important, what's not important, and help spot where statistics are leading us astray. As a manager of a large company, I did a lot of data analysis and put teams together, made them work. I've been in Santa Barbara County for over 40 years. And for much of that time, I rode bicycles a lot. So I think I've been to every little settlement in the county and stopped and talked to somebody in almost all of them. And of course, I have friends all over the county. That's it.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for interviewing tonight. My question is, how would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
Well, I think Santa Barbara County is a very diverse community. It's got diversity in so many dimensions that it's almost uncountable. So you can't accommodate every dimension of diversity but we'll do our best. I think the best pathway to that is listening and transparency so that everyone understands what's going on. I think keeping communities that are coherent communities together in the same district is desirable. But other than that, I just think we do our best.
Thank you.
Good evening. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? And when you disagreed with others, how did you handle the disagreements?
Right. I've run my own company for many years. When we did technical things, we developed some very complicated technology. I ran a team from about 2 to about 12 people, doing some very complicated things over a number of years. That was generally a group of professionals, PhDs and technicians and things like that. And we solved some very hard problems as a team. Since I'm mainly retired, and I'm not completely retired, I still run the company, but now I import things from the Philippines. So I spent the last couple of years putting together a team from craftspeople in the hinterlands of the Philippines. And I work with about 5 people and interface with about 30 or 40 people, providing work for those people. Those people are extremely poor by US standards, almost unbelievable. But we've created jobs for them. The poorest, some have college education, some don't even read and write in their native language. But we've developed a coherent team that's keeping several people alive and working. The last part, I took a business relationship course many, many years ago, and I've used the 10 rules of communication since doing that. That's what I use to handle agreements and disagreements. For example, one rule is you always want to criticize problems and not people. And if you feel you're being criticized, take the criticism as directed toward a problem and not directed toward you or any other person. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Byerly. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'll have your fifth and final question. How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? And what are some ideas that you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Well, I think you've got to advertise to reach a very broad audience. And I wouldn't say I'm an advertising kind of guy. I'm more a scientific kind of guy. But, you know, I'd be willing to meet people in coffee shops, explain what we're doing, listen to input. You know, presumably the commission has a website and email that people can see what's going on and accept comments. Perhaps you even have a Facebook page. I think most of the cities have some kind of public outreach program. Certainly get way too many texts from the city of Galita explaining to me what's going on with the city. Nextdoor.com, for instance, is a place you can advertise. I think the way we make people understand is have fact-based, concrete criteria for redistricting. I think you can explain that kind of criteria very simple to people so that they can understand the process. So if we ensure transparency and make all the criteria public, I think we can get people on board. Thanks.
Mr. Byerly, thank you for your interest in being a member of the commission and your service in our community. We have a number of other interviews we're going to conduct this evening, so we're going to move you back over to the public side of the meeting for a few minutes. I would encourage you to stay with us as we intend to make an appointment at the end of all of the interviews and swear in the new commissioner once chosen. Okay. So thank you again, and we'll slide you back over to the other side for just a few more minutes.
Fantastic.
Our next candidate will be Mike Brady. Good evening, Mr. Brady. If I could invite you to unmute. I see your camera is working well. If you could take just a brief moment and introduce yourself to the commission, and then we'll proceed with the questions as we did the last candidate.
Good evening. I'm Mike Brady. I've been pretty much a lifelong resident of the county. Been here since I graduated from UCSB. I never left. I love the county. I love the community I live in. And I am very honored to even be considered to be in a role of being a commissioner in this commission. It's of vital importance. So thank you for the ask.
Hello. So thank you for being here with us today. Given the commission's current members and what you know about their background, skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background, experience, skills, and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
Sure. I don't know any of the commissioners. I've never met them. I did read some brief bio information on the website. A very impressive group of people. For me, from my perspective, you know, I think we all know that the people are the ones that grant authority to our government. It's not the other way around. And so the vote and people's ability to vote and to vote fairly is absolutely critical. And at the basic level, at the local community level is the most important. That is where we as citizens have most impact. I am I'm most interested in this from that perspective. You know, I've done a lot of volunteering over the years. More recently, I've been helping packing sacks of foods at the mission for the local People Helping People food program. What I found getting rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty a little bit and seeing actually what's going on is most gratifying to me. And that is really basically why I would be interested in serving on this commission, because I don't want to be standing on the sideline criticizing. I want to be able to know what's going on. I want to be able to clearly help in any way I can to promote the vote and everybody's right to vote. And so basically, that's why I'm here. I'm a community member. And I want to help.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I think I was a little asleep at the switch here, leading off. So if I may jump in, Mr. Brady, I'm sorry. I think you've answered a good part of this question, but our number one question was, again, why do you want to serve on the commission?
I think I really answered it. Maybe I jumped ahead a little bit. But again, I just want to impart, I'm part of the community. I've been here for 40 years. I've volunteered in a whole variety of levels. I've attended planning commission meetings. I've attended supervisory meetings. And I see that the government, as it acts right here locally, is the most impactful to our community, and where it's absolutely critical that every citizen has the right to vote, and we encourage that they all do that. And this commission and districting lines and how that is set up is integral to that whole process. So I don't know if I answered the same question twice. If I did, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Brady, for being here tonight. My question is the third question. How would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
Communities of interest. That is a very, to me, interesting phrase. I think that is where the rubber meets the road in this commission. I think being able to do that and to be able to balance all of those communities and the diversity that we have in this county, and not be accused of gerrymandering, quite frankly, is, like I said, the critical work of what we're doing here. You know, as an aside there, just as an observer, I've always been a little bit perplexed at the current lines as they are drawn. For example, I've never quite understood, and there may be very good legitimate reasons for it, why, for example, Cuyama is in the first district with Carpinteria and Montecito, when it's separated from Montecito and Carpinteria is not only geographically separated, but physically separated by road systems and basically by economics. And so that's interesting to me. I've also somebody previously was talking about Guadalupe, and that over the years, excuse me, I've got I just got to shut that off, that over the years, they have been switched from district to district. And to me, that's very interesting. And I think we need to look very, very hard at those types of issues. We've got geography to look at. We've got what you're referring to as communities of interest, which I think is a very fluid, kind of interesting term. The bottom line is we've got to do the fairest possible job that we can at giving every person equal representation and fair representation at the Board of Supervisors level. And if we can do, if we can do that, we've done our job.
Thank you.
Good evening. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? When you disagreed with others, how did you handle those disagreements?
Well, my professional life for 40 years, I've been a real estate broker. I've handled communities all throughout the North County of Santa Barbara, including land and agricultural issues. Representing buyers and sellers of property, you are basically trying to bring vastly different interests and reasons for entering into a negotiation. You're trying to bring them together. You're trying to get them to understand each other's perspectives. And it is only by doing that do you ever come to an agreement. Do you ever get cooperation? And so I really think that's my skill set. That's what I do. That's the way I've made my living. I do it on a day-to-day, hands-on basis. The critical thing to that, really, what I've learned many times over and over again, is listening. If you don't listen to people, if you don't listen to what they're saying, and you don't try to understand where they're coming from, you're going to get nowhere. So, like I said, this is what I've done. I've been very successful at it at my professional career, and I think I can bring that to the table with this commission.
Good evening, Mr. Brady. I'll be giving you your fifth and last question this evening. How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? And what are some ideas that you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, messaging, making sure you're getting the message out as to what you're doing and that it's a transparent process and that you're working to try to achieve a goal for everybody is absolutely the essence of what you're doing. Really, PR, public relations, getting the word out is as critical as the work that we're doing, the hard work, the day-to-day work of figuring out the demographics, the geographics, all the rest of the things that we'll be dealing with. Public relations is key. And if we don't get them out front in the messaging, there will be all kinds of people on the sidelines taking pot shots at us. So we've got to make sure that people know there's no political agenda, that this is a neutral commission. I don't know what the budgeting for this commission is in terms of public relations, but we have to be continually putting out press releases, messaging what the purpose of this is, simple, direct, and continually be in front of the local media to give our message. And that needs to be budgeted and that needs to be staffed. So press releases, being available as commissioners for outreach. All of those things, as I said, are as important and should really be, we should devote as much time to as the time that we take to really do the hard work, which is come up with district lines.
Mr. Brady, thank you for your responses this evening, your interest in serving on the commission. We really appreciate it. As you probably heard me say to Mr. Byerly just a moment ago, we do have some other interviews to conduct still this evening. So we're going to move you back over to the audience side of our Zoom meeting for a few minutes. I would encourage you to stay with us. The intent of the commission at the end of all of this is to select and hopefully swear in a new commissioner. So if you could remain available, we'd appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's an honor. And if I am chosen, I will work diligently to redistrict this county so that everybody has an equal and appropriate right to vote.
Thank you, sir. So the third candidate listed on our regular agenda this evening is Mr. Lupe Alvarez. As we have done in prior appointment cycles, we will not re-interview him this evening, but instead would point out that the commissioners have all received a link to his pre-recorded interview and have had a chance in the past few days to review that again, and will consider his candidacy based on his original interview. So at this point, we're going, correct if I get this wrong, but we're going to recess our regular meeting briefly. We'll call to order the special meeting for this evening for the purpose of one additional interview with Mr. Kevin Kasich.
And Mr. Chair, I've noted that all of the commissioners are present for the special meeting.
Thank you. Very well. Do we have Mr. Kasich ready?
And there is an opportunity for public comment just on this item, but we maybe we can ask Andrea to weigh in. If we can also ask that folks wait until after the interview, or how can we best handle that?
I think this is an unusual circumstance, and I would rather have them all at the same time. But because it is a special meeting and it is an independent meeting, I think we ask for public comment. If the party says that they are happy to wait to weigh in at the end, that would be fine also.
We do, Chair Morris, we do have 2 hands raised for this item.
Okay, very well. So again, we'll try to enforce the same rules that we did at the beginning of our regular meeting and take comments at this point on items not on the agenda, so not necessarily related to Mr. Kasich's interview. But if the individuals with their hands raised have other comments that they would like to make, we'd be happy to take those at this time.
Okay, and we have 3 hands raised. I have Shirley, followed by Andy Caldwell, then Kelly Rose.
Very well. And I'm sorry, I missed the first. Who was the first one again?
The first one is Shirley.
Very well. And if you are ready to make a comment, if you could unmute. Shirley. Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Morris. My name is Shirley Boydston, resident of Guadalupe for soon to be 93 years. I would like to speak in support of Lupe Alvarez.
Ms. Boydston, could I interrupt you for just one
Certainly.
moment? Could I have you hold that comment for just a moment until after we have completed one more interview?
Right. I did not understand the vice
No,
chair.
you're quite all right. We're trying to do this a little differently. So if you'll hang on with us, we'll get to your comment in just a few moments.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
The next speaker is Andy Caldwell, followed by Kelly Rose.
Welcome back, Mr. Caldwell.
Chair Morris, as many of you know, I've been a government watchdog for 30 years in the region, and we've actually been involved with Brown Act litigation on more than one occasion. And I'm a little bit confused as to what you're doing here. Typically, I think that the Brown Act has usually a 48 or 72-hour notice for meetings. But if something is an emergency, so to speak, that you can't wait any longer, well, they can add it to the agenda late. But it's got to be an emergency, i.e. Something compelling and urgent that if you don't act now, you forever lose your opportunity. And my question is did you add this applicant under that guise? Because surely if you did, that's an abuse of the Brown Act, because what you can simply do is say, hey, we're going to continue these interviews till next week or whatever next meeting you have, i.e. there wouldn't be an urgent you either do it now or his application dies. And I don't know if your counsel would comment on that, but I'm going to just tell you this, in 30 years, I've never seen a board do what you're doing right now. Thank you.
So let's do this. Let's take Ms. Rose's comment, and then Ms. Orden, if you want to make a response to that comment, we'll come back to that. But let's close out the public speakers first and hear from Ms. Rose.
And we have two speakers. We have Kelly Rose, followed by Ramos.
I'm sorry. This is Kelly.
Mr. Rose, my apologies.
That's
Please.
fine. And I've been trying to listen very carefully, but it seemed, and I raised my hand at the wrong time. I assumed that this was going to be a cue in response to the interview with Mr. Kasich, but if it's not, I guess, did we decide that we're going to wait until the end when everybody is through before we do comments? Is that correct?
Yes, if you'd like to speak in support or opposition to a candidate, we'd ask that you do that after we've completed the interviews. So
I was trying to make
is that
sure.
the purpose of your comment?
Yes, I was trying to make sure I was on the right train. So thank you.
You're welcome. We'll make sure you get a ticket on that train.
Great.
And the last hand I see raised is from Ramos.
Can you hear me?
Good evening.
Good
Yes,
evening.
ma'am.
And I also was confused in terms of when we speak on behalf of our support for the candidates. So I will wait. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll get you back in just a moment then.
And if I may, Ramos is the last name and Cruz is the first name. I know it's confusing.
Not at all. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other hands raised at this moment?
I see no more hands raised.
Okay. Ms. Orden, did you want to make a comment about Mr. Caldwell's question, or where are you on that this evening?
Yes, yes, I would. It is not uncommon in certainly the doing of the county's business or the city's business to have on the same date and time a general meeting and a special meeting. There is also the possibility, as he accurately states, to have an emergency meeting. This is not an emergency meeting. This is merely one of the opportunities to have a special meeting, which requires only 24 hours notice. And that's exactly what happened. The county has treated these as two separate meetings, independent meetings. We close one meeting and we start another, and then we close this meeting. So the only thing that I did mention before this special meeting, that if it was necessary for anyone to respond at the end of this meeting to what has happened at this meeting, and the only thing that has happened, there was no other business at this meeting, accept an interview of Mr. Cases. So that opportunity should be given to any member of the public who wants only to attend this meeting and make their comments at the conclusion based only upon the testimony or the interview of the applicant.
Okay, so thank you. And so in the spirit of making sure we get this right, let me make sure that I'm clear on what I'm going to do here following this. We're going to close public comment at this moment. We will then proceed to an interview with Mr. Kasich. Ms. Orton, if I understand you correctly, at that point, we will open the floor for public comment related to Mr. Kasich's interview. Following that public comment.
Exactly. If there is a desire to open for that,
correct.
They can wish, if they prefer, to come to the general meeting and comment upon him at that time as well.
Okay. Okay, very well. So because as soon as we're finished with that, we will go back to our regular meeting, at which point we will be in public comment on all of the interviews conducted.
That's right. That's right.
Very well. All right. I hope everybody else got that. Okay, Ms. Tilton, is Mr. Kasich available and ready for an interview at this point?
Yes, we're just bringing him over now.
Can we bring him over? You bet.
There he is.
Good evening, Mr. Kasich. Hopefully we didn't confuse you too much. You're still here, so that's a good sign. I see your camera's working. I hear your microphone is unmuted. If you could take just a moment, Mr. Kasich, and introduce yourself to the commission, after which we will have a series of 5 questions as you saw previously.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Kasich. I live in the San Ynez Valley. I'm a graduate of UC Santa Barbara, and my son was a graduate of UC Santa Barbara, but a volleyball player, so he's more famous than I am. I continue to be a supporter of the UCSB's graduate program, funding basically graduate research projects unrelated to my business, just for the sheer fact of doing it. I'm also on the board of visitors of Vanderbilt School of Management.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kasich, and welcome. Very first question tonight is, why do you want to be a member of the redistricting, or to serve on the redistricting commission?
Very simply, to give back. I know it's a very short answer, but that's how I feel. I think it's important to contribute to communities, and I think I have a lot to offer. Fundamentally, the one person, the one vote, the measure G, I think are critical, and they're the basis of our democracy. So it is something that I feel like that my skill set could add to, could help out. And so I'm putting myself in an interview in front of this commission.
Hello there. Thank you for being here with us today. So my question for you is, given the commission's initial current members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background, experiences, skills, and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
Sure. I did read the bios on this panel. I was very impressed, and I think they're very varied, and I think that's really good. I think what I add is I'm the president of a company that has 700 employees, serving 1,700, 1,800 senior citizens. So it's senior housing, if I'm not trying to be vague about that. So what I add is my talent set is working with everybody from inside the company, outside, but inside the company, financial executives, accounting, nurses, caregivers, all the way to teenagers that are, on a part-time basis, sort of passing through and just need, a few hours a week of work. So I think in that sense that I have a good depth of knowledge dealing with a lot of different people. On a daily basis, I'm not retired, I'm still working, but on a daily basis, I deal with government entities, I deal with lenders, I deal with legal issues, I deal with financial. So I've always run my business and trying to be as honest and transparent as possible. We have all kinds of people and everybody's got different issues. And for us, it's not about me sort of being a dictator, but it's sort of bringing together for a common good. But most importantly it's the ability to listen. It's to listen and handle an issue, which I think exactly what this panel is going to be faced with. So I think that my skill set adds to the list of qualifications of the people already on the panel.
Good evening, Mr. Kasich. Thank you for joining us. The third question is, how would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
Thank you. I think the easy answer is it's got to be outreach. I think that the panel's job would be that they have to ask instead of assuming. I think that there is so many diverse elements in the county of Santa Barbara that it's so critical to be able to get out there and to determine and I'll get into that in the next question, which is it addresses that, is how do you go out to bring these people in so that they feel like they're represented? And it's not a bunch of what we want, what one group wants, all the stuff, maybe all the stuff that we've all seen go wrong with gerrymandering, which is people are using the system to further their best interest. How about if it's a little different and we say, look, here's groups. Here could be an ethnic, religious, age-based group, whatever it is, those are important because they need representation. So I think if we can get out there and determine what they are, which means getting out there and reaching them, then you can bring those people together and they have a voice. The bigger question is, yes, you're going to have people pulling because you can't please everybody. But first and foremost, I think we have to bring these people in, these groups in, identify them, understand their numbers, their location, and then figure out after that how to move forward and be inclusive.
Good evening, Mr. Kasich. I'll be giving you your. Oh,
my turn.
So sorry.
Hi, I'm Karen, and good evening. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? And when you disagreed with others, how did you handle the disagreements?
Sure. I'm good with short answers, as you can see. My answer is every day. I came from the world of suits and ties, and nothing makes me happier than to be in the San Ynez Valley, riding a horse, and as you can see, not wearing a tie. I created a culture within my company that hopefully that you will understand that that's what I bring to this organization. I create the culture of diversity, inclusive. I want good people. We have 700 employees. We have my executive team is 24. The majority of women. My senior executive team, which I hate that term. Let's just call it the team leaders, is 5. 3 of them are women. Of the 3, 2 of them are minorities. I think my track record stands for itself. That's not the question you asked. So let me direct right to it. I get together all the time. It's not about what I want. It's to be able to say, great, let's listen. Let me hear what you have to say. Keep people directed, moving down. What's the point we're trying to get to? But it's called listening. So when you hire somebody, when we have a job to do, maybe it's not exactly what you would do or how you would handle it, but you hired somebody, let them go do it. Because as long as they're moving in that direction with the same culture, which is respecting people, I think you're fine.
This will be your fifth and last question this evening, Mr. Kasich. Thanks for joining us. How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? And what are some ideas that you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Sure. I actually like that question because this actually came up in my business. The simple answer is one size doesn't fit all. And that is, this community has got your voting groups. You know, let's say you're 18 to 21s, you've got your 20s, you've got your 30s, you've got your 90s, you've got all kinds of people. They don't communicate the same across. You know, Facebook is for a certain group, texting is for another group. So we have this whole concept of, I believe it's paramount that the commission be able to get out in multiple forms so that we can attract not just what we think. I mean, I know people pick up the phone. I know my kids, you can't call them to save your life. They text. So I think that you have to be able to reach that larger group. And I would give the example. And I don't know what the budget is, and I don't know if there's any restrictions, but I'm going to just tell you sort of from my side what I think. I think you have to hit a texting and website for seniors. Maybe it's a postcard, maybe it's a radio spot on some program that's themed toward that. There could be 800 numbers. There could be outreach to organizations, whether, let's say, it's religious or civic, but somehow I believe that the commission has a responsibility to get out to all those people, which means you have to speak their language and however they communicate.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate your responses this evening, and mostly appreciate your interest and willingness to serve on the commission.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're gonna move you back over to the other side of the room for a few moments. We're gonna take some public comment, have a little discussion amongst ourselves, and then we'll see if we can get to a resolution on this item this evening. So again, thank you for your time and your interest.
Thank you.
All right, folks, based on our explanation and discussion with the council a few minutes ago, we will open the floor to public comment related to the single agenda item on the special meeting agenda, which is the interview of Mr. Kevin Kasich. If there's anybody who would like to make comment regarding Mr. Kasich's interview, now would be the time to raise your hand, and we will take that. Following those comments, we will adjourn the special meeting, rejoin our regular meeting, and take public comment related to the other interviews conducted this evening, as well as any advice folks want to give us about making an appointment. So, Hilton, is there any hands raised
Yes,
for
we
comment
have.
on this item?
Okay, for this item, for this candidate, Kevin Kasich, we'll be opening public comment, and I see we have hands raised by Kelly Rose and LaWanda Lyons Pruitt.
Chair Morris.
Mr. Rose, are you back?
Yes, I am back, but I understand from council's response is that I could defer the discussion until all the candidates have been open for discussion. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, I think I'd prefer to do that if that's all right.
Very well. Don't leave. We'll get you back on the queue.
And the next speaker for speaking regarding specifically candidate Kasich is LaWanda Lyons Pruitt.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Lyons Pruitt. How are you?
I'm good, Chair Morris. Good evening, commissioners. LaWanda Lyons Pruitt, representing the Santa Maria Lompoc branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. You also know us as NAACP. We know that Latinx and people of color representation is more important than party representation, which shouldn't be the case. Although you only interviewed one Democrat. Democrats are underrepresented on the commission. I spoke previously before, and I still feel that people of color simply do not want someone to represent them based on racial status, as if all people of color and even all Latinx person view the world the same way and can speak adequately on behalf of others from their demographic group. People of color are diverse, and like white people, they hold views and have values and want to see those reflected in the makeup of this commission. So appointing someone who is Republican and Latinx to replace a Democrat would not only truly reflect the views of the overwhelming majority of people of color who is a registered Democrat or no party preference. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no more hands raised for comments on this, on Mr. Kasich's interview.
Okay, so we will adjourn our special meeting and reopen the regular meeting for this evening. Now, by my count, we have completed all of the interviews of the candidates that are eligible and have expressed an interest in serving in this particular, or being appointed this evening. So with that, we will open the public comment regarding all candidates that have been interviewed or on the consideration list this evening.
And the first speaker we have is candidate Lupe Alvarez, followed by Carlos Aguirre.
Mr. Alvarez, good evening.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak again. I just wanted to clarify a few points from my interview. And the first one is to the nice attorney, Ms. Heller. I don't know her. She corrected me that Guadalupe was not the only city not represented on the commission. I thank her for that. I was not aware of that, and we could always learn from others, so thank you. To Mr. McClintock, when I said about Guadalupe that I wanted to represent or only wanted to represent Guadalupe, that is true. I want to represent Guadalupe, but once you become part of a commission or a city council or any other organization, you represent the county or the area as a whole. And I just wanted to clarify that because when you do this, I want everybody in the county to be represented and counted. Every single resident, every single person counts, every single vote counts. So I just wanted to clarify that. An example is when you have the Dodgers and the Yankees playing, you know, you might be a Giants fan from San Francisco, but if the San Francisco Giants don't make it, you're still going to support LA. And so I wanted to clarify those points. And I know you have a hard decision. And I also want to say just in closing that if not selected, I still would be willing to help the commission and this redistricting commission move ahead and make it fair and transparent for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Carlos Aguirre, followed by Philip Seymour.
Hello, this is Carlos.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, yes, you went back to the pool of 45 candidates when you have the most qualified and last willing District 3 applicant wanting to serve on this commission, that applicant is Lupe Alvarez. There's nothing in the ordinance that says you are able to do this when you have Lupe Alvarez ready to serve on the commission and use his experience to help in the process.
Thank you, sir.
The next is Philip Seymour, followed by Lee Heller.
Good evening, Mr. Seymour.
Good evening, commissioners. Philip Seymour, and I am speaking on behalf of the Democratic Central Committee tonight, although I may have a few personal comments. This is the first time I watched the interviews, and I realize what a tough job you have, because when you choose one, you're necessarily saying no to some other candidates who seem very qualified. However, ultimately, the will you have to respect is that of the voters who enacted Measure G. And I think they've made their job a little simpler tonight by having established a requirement that partisan representation, although we want people who are impartial, as far as party affiliation and representation on the commission, it has to be essentially proportional to the party presence in the party and unaffiliated persons' presence in the county. I think we belabored this in the past, but tonight you have the opportunity to have perfect mathematical proportionality, as close as you can get it. There are currently 3 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 3 unaffiliated people, if I'm correct. Adding a 5th Democrat would give the, essentially as near as you can round off perfect representation for all parties, which is what the voters wanted. And ultimately that is fair. And I think it's essential to maintaining kind of the appearance of neutrality that's necessary here. We understand that this necessarily means that other people who seem very well qualified, and I thought the 2 Republicans that were interviewed tonight were impressive people, along with the Democratic candidate, but they can participate in other ways. Your job is simply to, apply the ordinance, follow that, and go forward as well as you can. I assume that the argument about proportional representation by ethnic background is still in the background. And, on that, what the ordinance says, there is no proportional representation required. Now, I would add this, in Santa Barbara County, maybe not in other parts of the country, but ethnicity is not a perfect representation of what people represent, what their interests are, who they affiliate with. Believe it or not, I am 1/8 Hispanic. My great grandmother was came from a Spanish landowner family. She eloped with an Anglo-Saxon adventurer, disgracing herself in the eyes of the family, but permanently putting our family on the side of immigrants. My wife her father was a 1st generation Mexican-American. We still have his Bronze Star that he won in World War II. He decided not to stick around after being married. So my wife was raised by her Anglo-Saxon mother and identifies and looks, white. But that just goes to show you, we're a very mixed population now, and we're getting more mixed every day. Okay, my time is up, and I will cede the floor.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Lee Heller, followed by Kelly Rose.
Welcome back, Dr. Heller.
Chair Morris and commissioners. I want to begin by thanking all of the people interviewed tonight. I was impressed by Dr. Byerly. We like to use our titles for people who get their PhDs. And Mr. Brady and Mr. Kasif. And I'm following up on Mr. Seymour, fortunately, because one of the things that happens when you're an attorney and you listen to non-lawyers interpret the law is you kind of sit there and tear your hair out, knowing that people mean well, but don't actually know what they're talking about. So I know that Mr. Seymour is an attorney, and I'm going to reinforce what he said. And this is a really tough moment because the language of the ordinance does call out the need for demographic diversity. And this commission tried its best to appoint a ethnically diverse commission. And unfortunately, circumstances have resulted in the removal of 3 people who were ethnically diverse. But the reality is that the language of the ordinance also requires partisan parity based on party registration. And that doesn't go away. And that is actually more binding if you look at the language of the ordinance than the language about demographic diversity. If we had a more diverse pool at this point to draw on, if Mr. Holland had been able to choose or had thought more about choosing diversity, we might not be in this spot. But based on the law, which is how I proceed, and I'm a stickler for that the same way that Chair Morris is a stickler for consistency, this is what the law mandates. I'm also concerned about Mr. Alvarez in particular having identified some pretty partisan perspectives based on public comments submitted by Spencer Brandt. So I'm sympathetic. I know you're in a tough spot, but I think at the end of the day, the law has to determine your choices. And you've just heard from 2 lawyers who I would argue are somewhat better qualified to make comment on this than general members of the public. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pardon me. The next speaker is Kelly Rose, followed by Juan Garcia, and then Wally.
Mr. Rose, I think your moment has arrived.
And I've learned how to unmute quicker. My name's Kelly Rose, and I live in Los Olivos. I retired from a large international accounting, tax, and consulting firm, Ernst & Young, as a global managing partner. In that capacity, I work with many companies, large, small, private, public, as well as CEOs, presidents of companies, business owners, and board members. And I think that 35 years I spent with Ernst & Young helped me develop a pretty good experience base for judging character and ability. And I am very proud to say that Mr. Kasich is a neighbor of mine. I learned today that he's a Democrat. I would have never guessed, but that's okay. I would like to say that what I've learned with my experience with Mr. Kasich is that he is a successful business owner and an entrepreneur. He is focused, he is smart, and he exercises sound judgment. He doesn't allow personal bias to impact or interfere with his decision process. And I think most of all, he keeps an open mind when hearing others speak. He listens and considers suggestions and recommendations before coming to a conclusion. A lot of us don't listen very well. We've learned that we're the smartest person in the room. He doesn't operate on that level. So from that perspective, I think from my personal and professional opinion, Mr. Kasich would be a valuable and contributing member of the Redistricting Committee. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Juan Garcia, followed by Wally.
Evening, Mr. Garcia.
¿Sí me oye? Okay. Buenas tardes. Hablo para comentarles que mi familia, al igual que yo, apoyamos a Lupe Alvarez por completo. Lupe Alvarez es una persona honesta y sabe lo que nosotros en nuestros pueblitos alrededor del condado necesitamos. Gracias y hay que votar por Lupe Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
And the last hand I see raised is Wally.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I thought it was unfortunate that Mr. Alvarez had to come back and clarify things, because I remember his original interview and he was quite pro Guadalupe, but he made some erroneous statements. But all the other 3 guys that interviewed tonight were all quite quite experienced. I couldn't really pick out a difference between the two. I thought in the end, Mr. Kasef came across a little bit more clear about all the different things. Other than that, the three guys almost had the same kind of answers across the board. But I thought Mr. Kasef just came across a little bit better, especially on that last question about reaching out. Reminded me of Commissioner Adams when during her interview about the diversity of who you're trying to reach. And he also addressed the different kinds of communities of interest, being people, all kinds of different demographics between religion, ethnicity, age, and all kinds of things. So I thought Mr. Kasef came across just a tiny bit better than the other two, but not much difference between the three. And again, I thought it unfortunate that Mr. Alvarez was so gung-ho about his community early on. He had to come in tonight and correct things. I thought that unfortunate. But anyway, I'm definitely pro Kasef now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Tilton, any other hands?
Yes, we have three more hands raised. We have Joe Pierre, followed by Ramos, and then Spencer Brandt.
Mr. Pierre, welcome.
Well, thank you for taking the time to hear me again tonight. I want to remind everybody that my name is Joe Pierre. I am the North County Vice Chair of the Democratic Central Committee, the Democratic Party of Santa Barbara County. And before I get started, I want to say congratulations to Commissioner Adams on her appointment and welcome her to the commission. And for her benefit, I know I disclosed before, Commissioner Adams, I have a history with Chair Morris. He and I both served on the Workforce Development Board before. I know as he is leading the commission, you guys are in good hands. So Measure G was passed by the voters to create this independent body, and it states that the makeup of the commission shall be as proportionate as possible to the percentage of voters who are registered with each political party. Santa Barbara County voters' political party registrations are 46% Democrat, 25% Republican, and 29% no party preference. Currently, there are 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 3 no party preference commissioners on this commission. Democrats are only represented by 36% of the commissioners. So Republicans are properly represented. They have 27% of the commission. If you were to appoint a Republican to fill this vacancy, that would result in the Republican Party being overrepresented by 10 percentage points compared to the number of county voters who are registered as Republicans. If you were to appoint a Democrat, Democrats would be proportionately represented as possible, comprising 45% of the commission compared to the 46% of the county voters. Tonight, you interviewed one Democrat, Mr. Kasef. Given that he is the only Democrat left in the pool, and I know your hands are tied because of the way the ordinance was written, the way the number of qualified candidates that you were handed, Mr. Kasef is the only person that should be considered for this position in the 3rd district. Not hearing anything that would disqualify him, hearing that he is very well qualified, as a matter of fact, I urge this commission to appoint Kevin Kasef to fill the vacancy in the 3rd district. I again want to take a minute to thank every commissioner and every applicant to this commission for your willingness to serve our community. We deeply respect the work that you are all doing. That respect includes ensuring that this commission complies with its controlling ordinance and appoint a Democrat to fill the vacancy in the 3rd district. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Ramos, followed by Spencer Brandt. And I think it was Cruz Ramos, but the only name that appears is Ramos.
Indeed. Welcome, Ms. Ramos.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak on a very, very critical issue, not only to Santa Barbara County, but to every county in the state of California and the US. I want to speak in support of Mr. Alvarez. And in order to be able to do that, I just want to say that redistricting is critical, yes, to have the diversity, to have the information that is important for voters to be able to represent not only themselves, their interests, and be able to communicate that to their elected officials. So in order to be able to do that, I understand the need, as has been raised often during this session, about the need, how are you going to do outreach? And to that regard, I want to say, my background has been in Fresno County from where I come. I had a Fresno County voter education project, and it was titled Your Vote Counts. I believe that that also is critical. If you're going to have people participate, and if you're going to have redistricting so people can vote, it's important to have representation of individuals who know how to reach out to various communities. I believe Mr. Alvarez has done that successfully, not only in his role as a landowner, not only in his role as a neighbor, not only in his role of an elected official, not only in his role of the various commissions and boards and various entities that he has been a part of, and he strongly continues to support. Yes, he speaks on behalf of Guadalupe because it's a passionate thing. It's a passionate thing for me too. I live in Guadalupe now. I come from another community where I was a former city manager in Fresno County that is identical to Guadalupe. And that is why I had taken the position as city manager for Guadalupe, because it represented everything that the city of San Joaquin and Fresno was and continues. So bottom line, the important thing here is who is going to be able to represent all people in the county. And having known Mr. Alvarez, having watched him participate with our communities, and not only that, but giving me support when I was a city manager. He gave that same support to others within the community that needed help, regardless of their status, regardless of what help it was needed. He did that. And first, I want to also mention, Mr. Alvarez is not a slum lord. I can speak to slum lordships, if you will, in Fresno County. And I can tell you, Mr. Alvarez's properties are first class all the way around. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work.
Ms. Ramos.
The next speaker is Spencer Brandt.
Good evening, Mr. Brandt.
Good evening, Chair Morris and commissioners. First, I just want to say a hello and welcome to Commissioner Adams. I'm very glad to see that you've joined the commission, and just state briefly that I don't envy the tough decisions that you guys have to make up here and that you have to make tonight. I want to bring your attention to something that I submitted for the record in public comment, which was a news article that had been published in the Santa Maria Sun, in which Mr. Alvarez is quoted about as supportive of one of the sitting members of the County Board of Supervisors. As we've heard tonight from so many members of the community, Mr. Alvarez, I don't know him personally, he seems like a really good guy. He clearly has a lot of support in the community, and I find that very admirable. And it also is his First Amendment right to support a county supervisor of his choosing. But in that article, the reason I submitted is I was troubled by the fact that he's quoted in the article as bragging about how this county supervisor's election is going to result in more tax dollars for him as a mayor of a city in our county. And I just don't find that in keeping with what the purpose of this commission is in terms of getting the politicians out of the redistricting process. I think that it sounds like the previous speaker tonight said that they were the city manager of Guadalupe. So there is some kind of, I guess, institutional effort here, and I just don't know if that's in keeping with the purpose of the commission. My last thing on this is, given that Mr. Alvarez was allowed to sort of give his 2 cents during public comment tonight, I think it'd be appropriate for you to invite the other candidates back as well, just to allow them to be able to have their second shot, since I didn't see that as in keeping with the process. Now, I want to talk about the interviews that you had at hand tonight, because I think you had good interviews from all of those that were interviewed tonight. And I was particularly interested in Mr. Kasich and his background leading a large company, which is definitely a really cool thing to get on any commission, as folks like Mr. Kasich are usually incredibly busy and don't have that time to give back. So I thought that was really cool. But the real reason that he stood out for me is because he really embodied something that I've been harping on you guys about, which is direct outreach to members of the public. It's all great, fine and dandy to make our outreach materials, but what happens if they don't go anywhere? We need to make sure that there's that direct outreach to individuals to make sure that they get in the hands of regular folks in our county. So I really appreciated his comments about that, about text messages with senior citizens. And I think that that is something that really makes him stand out for this role to me. So I think that's very important. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And then I understand that Andy Caldwell is trying to raise his hand, but it's not showing up on my screen. So I apologize for not recognizing that Andy Caldwell has been requesting to speak. So we will take Andy Caldwell.
So before Mr. Caldwell speaks, Ms. Tilton, do you have any other hands raised?
We have hands raised by another hand raised by Cruz Ramos. I'm not sure if that was just a hand that was left up, because I know we did just hear from Ms. Ramos. And then we have a hand raised from Shirley.
Excellent. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that Shirley Boyston had a chance, because I know I confused myself and probably her when she tried to speak earlier. So we'll take Andy Caldwell and then Shirley Boyston.
Chairman Morris, members of the commission, thank you. I will be the first to admit that when Lupe Alvarez first applied for this commission through your process, he sounded like he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for Guadalupe. And the truth is, he does, and the people of Guadalupe do, as well as many of the people in Santa Maria. I want you to think about, a couple of weeks ago, I told you that one of the things you guys have for going for you is how incredibly smart and educated you are in terms of being able to understand some of the things that you've been trained on. But there's a flip side to that. Here you have a Latino son of an immigrant, no college degree. Yet he manages to be elected to the city council for 10 years. He becomes the chair of the Santa Barbara APCD, the chair of the Santa Barbara County Associations of Governments, a member of LAFCO, a board member of the Marion Hospital Board, and a board director of the Community Bank of Santa Maria, which is the largest local bank in this region, with no college degree. What does that say about Lupe Alvarez? I believe that Janet Rios would love to make more Lupe Alvarez's in this community, and so would Alan Hancock, Professor Kate Adams. This is the every man that's not on your commission right now. Most all of you have advanced degrees, if not master's, PhDs, and the like. You don't have an everyman on this commission, let alone a Latino everyman. You know, one of your speakers said, well, just because he's Latino doesn't mean he can speak for Latinos. I beg to differ. If you got elected for 10 years in a minority majority community of Guadalupe, he was elected 6 times in that community and would probably still be on that city and still be their mayor if they didn't have term limits. This guy is a remarkable man. I know of nobody else with no virtually no college education that achieved what this man did in a white man's government world. Because I've been following local government for 30 years. There is only 2 or 3 Latinos. All of them have college degrees, most of them advanced degrees, that achieved less than he did, but at least they made it to that level of government. This guy is the most qualified expert. That doesn't mean the other people aren't good, but this guy knows more about this county and this region than anybody else because he served on county-wide. He didn't just serve on Guadalupe City Council. He served on all the county-wide government entities we have in this county. All of them. He was the chair of most of them. This is the kind of person you're trying to reach in this community. So don't ignore, and last point, there is no requirement to have X number of Democrats or X number of Latinos. They are all recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Shirley. And then again, we have still a hand raised by Ramos, but I know we just heard from that speaker.
Great. Ms. Boyston, how are you this evening?
Boggled. Thank you, Chair Morris. How do I follow Andy? Anyhow, I'd like not to focus on the letter behind his, Lupe's name, but on his personal qualities. He's been involved, as Andy pointed, excuse me, Andy pointed out, for everything from a young age. He's city, county, public service, works with all the groups, actively supports all organizations and people, sometimes supporting people when they don't know it themselves. He understands economics, demographics, and the need for collaboration in all levels. He works by being interested and supporting the needs and the wants of all segments of the county. Most of all, he has open and youthful ideas that definitely needed among the 425,000 plus county citizens. I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Tilton, any further hands raised?
I don't see any further hands raised. Oh.
Very well, we will close. We good? Okay, we will close public comment at this point and bring this back to the commission. Again, commissioners, I would remind you, I need you to use the raise hand feature on Zoom so that I know you're ready to speak. And at this point, I would welcome either discussion or perhaps more appropriately, if somebody wanted to start us off by making a motion so that we have something to discuss. Commissioner Trotsky. You're muted still, ma'am.
I make a motion that we appoint Lupe Alvarez to the 3rd District as commissioner based on his qualifications and his representation of the Hispanic community.
We have a motion in support of Lupe Alvarez. Is there a second to that motion?
I want to kind of give, I had my hand raised before, and I just wanted to give some time to kind of discuss. I think I don't feel ready to vote, so I just want to put that out there.
That's okay. If there's no second, we'll move on. But if we have something on the table, then we can talk about that. So is there anybody that wanted to second that motion? Okay. Is there another motion? Commissioner Twibell.
I don't have a motion, but I would just ask that our attorney clarify again the importance of the political party and the ethnic requirements.
Ms. Orden.
Yes, and all I can do is to refer you back to the ordinance, an ordinance written just by perhaps regular people, not with law degrees, who tried to give the the County of Santa Barbara, an independent commission of qualified people to draw these lines. And they thought that two things were terribly important, two major criteria. They also thought it was terribly important to have an impartial commission, an independent commission. But as we talked about before, and as you've heard from public comment, there are two areas that are most important, I think, in the ordinance. And yes, it is lawyers now that are going to be telling you what we think is in this. In the same way that reasonable people can argue and have different opinions, reasonable lawyers can too. But when I looked at these various provisions, I looked first to see just one of your questions, what role does the partisanship, the political party play in this ordinance? What did they want to see in your independent commission? And so it starts off in saying that if any vacancy occurs on the commission, just as what we have had here, the ordinance says, to the extent practical, the replacement commissioner shall be selected to maintain the balance of district representation and political affiliations that existed prior to the vacancy. So one of the factors you look to is, what did it look like before the vacancy? And you try to keep it the same. Then they speak very specifically to partisan affiliation. They say, you shall consider political party preference, selecting the applicants so that the political party preferences of the members shall be as proportional as possible to the percentage of voters that are registered with each political party. It does have a caveat, just the way the ethnic and racial portion does. It has a caveat which says, however, the political party preferences of the commission members are not required to be exactly the same as the proportion of the political party preferences among the registered voters of the county. It is clearly important, and it is mentioned twice. Two different sections talk about the partisanship. Nevertheless, there is also the message from the ordinance, which says, remember, the 6 appointees shall be chosen based on relevant experience, analytical skills, the ability to be impartial, and to ensure that the commission reflects the county's diversity, including racial, ethnic, geographic, age, and gender diversity. So it says to ensure, but there is still a caveat. However, formulas or specific ratios shall not be applied for this purpose. So what it was mentioned also in public comment, it is unfortunate that the pool from which you have to make these choices, to find these people with analytical skills, ability to be impartial, relevant experience, is not as diverse as it ought to be, and is not, you're not able to keep all of these things in balance, especially with the number of people that have had to resign for very good and sufficient reasons. As I came out last time, if I had to weigh it, because of the extent to which the people who drafted this ordinance were concerned about a balance of partisanship, thinking that might get to more impartiality, if there is a greater weight, it appears to be on the side of partisanship. But you cannot ignore either how important they thought it was to ensure that the commission reflects the county's diversity, including racial, ethnic, geographic, age, and gender diversity.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to take a stab at giving us a direction here?
Chair Morris, I'm
Mr.
wondering if
Adams.
you are, I'm wondering if you are interested in entertaining more motions or hearing from more commissioners about either their questions or their candidates or their concerns.
At this point, I'll take either. The more proper approach is we put a motion on the table and then discuss it. But if we're not
So-
ready for a motion, then let's discuss.
Well, I'll put a motion on the table. I move that we elect, or we appoint, I should say, Mr. Kasich to the commission.
Very well. We have a motion on the table to nominate Kevin Kasich as a member of the commission. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Bradley, are you raising your hand a second? Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Very well. Now, discussion for and against that motion. Anybody want to lead us off here? Commissioner Trotsky.
Thank you. I hear the concern for the balance of partisanship and proportional as possible. But given the dominance of white males on the commission and the underrepresentation of Hispanics, I don't see how Lupe Alvarez is the only choice. Partisan parity wasn't an issue when non-party preference was overrepresented, and there was overwhelming support for Kevin Elak, who would have given us yet a fifth commissioner as a non-party preference. And there was no concern about partisan parity at that point. How will this look to the Hispanic community if once again we overlook a qualified candidate that is Hispanic, that represents the North County, that speaks for people that don't have a voice? And how are we going to get these people to be involved? How will they want to be involved when we yet again vote another white male to the commission? I just think that Lupe Alvarez has gotten a lot of support, and I think he is the only choice we have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Turley.
Yes, first I just want to say that I think that Commissioner Trotsky makes some excellent points. It's really deeply unfortunate that the pool that we have to choose from is so lacking in diversity. And I just want to say that I have no doubt that Lupe Alvarez is a remarkable man. Clearly he is. I don't have any doubt that he's going to continue to be involved in advocating for the city of Guadalupe, whether or not we appoint him to this commission. I would love, love, love to ask his help in reaching out to his community, because it's clear from the many, many public comments that he's had that he has the trust of the citizens of Guadalupe. That being said, I think that the connection between him and a current county supervisor is incredibly concerning. First and foremost, our qualifications need to be that we're impartial. And I think that this is, in my opinion, one of the most direct lines to a connection to a current supervisor, and that makes me very uncomfortable. So that's what I'm feeling about this. And I would agree that I think that given the current applicants, that Kevin Kasich is our best qualified applicant.
Thank you. Commissioner Rios.
I think for me, hearing all the candidates was really hard, because I felt like they all brought something great to the table. Even just making a decision right now is really hard for me, because I think, like I said before, ethnic makeup, ethnicity is very important to me as a fellow Latina. I think I've voiced the importance of that here. And so I'm really trying to balance. I think Commissioner, you all have brought up some great points, especially because, you know, like you said, like the balance of political party wasn't an issue before, and right now it is. And so I do have to acknowledge that, you know, but also there's too much conflict of interest, and I want to ignore that. I think I appreciate that Lupe came on and clarified his, clarifying earlier that, you know, he will be a representative for all, but I think I'm just struggling with exactly what Commissioner Turley just brought up. The article that was very concerning to me, and so and same, you know, I would hope that if I were to do the same standard would be held, I would be held to the same standard. And so I don't know, I think right now I'm just in a very difficult place, so I'm gonna keep listening. That's where I'm at right now. And so I'm just going to keep listening for a second.
Very well. Commissioner Twibell?
You know, I think I noticed that that article was written in 2010. Is that far back enough to not have it be relevant right now in making our decisions, or in thinking about that, you know, he was a representative and very close to one of the supervisors?
Well, Commissioner Bray.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair. You know, I kind of share Commissioner Rios's angst here, and I'm just going to share, you know, my heart with my fellow commissioners. I know Mr. Alvarez. I've known him for a long time. I know he's an honorable man. I know that he has done great things in the community, and I am concerned about the Latino mix here. But I'm also a rule follower. I maybe it's my military background. I don't know, and I'm struggling with what the council said, our council said, as well as what I thought Ms. Heller said, as to what the ordinance says. So I'm really kind of struggling here with the candidate versus being a rule follower of how I see the ordinance.
Commissioner McClintock.
I'll just echo what I think a lot of commissioners have said already, but maybe just put a lot of emphasis on the idea that we absolutely need Mr. Alvarez's involvement in this process. He has obviously a great depth of knowledge about his community, a community that we want to be well represented in this process. A lot of support. He's an intelligent man, and but I think we need to lean on him and ask for his involvement as we reach out to communities and you know, do the outreach thing. But I would agree with Commissioner Bray and others who've really, you know, pointed out again and again that our legal counsel and the lawyers that have spoken during public comment have really underlined the importance of a partisan balance.
Thank you. Commissioner Turley and then Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring this back to a larger, bigger picture idea, which is that what we're discussing right now is really important in regards to having representation for everybody in our community. And I completely agree with all of the other commissioners when they say that we're all really feeling torn about not having the proper racial representation on this commission. That being said, I think that it's incredibly important that we remember that the appearance of impartiality could really bite us at the end of this process, and that if we kind of give in to this fantastic candidate who is well qualified, but possibly connected to a current sitting county supervisor, we could get to the end of this and be challenged in court and have all of the work that we've done up to this point invalidated. So I just want to remind everybody that that is the bigger picture of why we're here, is that at the end of this, we're trying to have the most impartial maps so that we can implement them without a concern over whether or not there was a lack of impartiality.
Commissioner Adams, and then Commissioner Trotsky.
So I am not a lawyer, and I want to say I am not a caveman lawyer either, which is a reference to Saturday Night Live, if you ever watched that and you're about my age. But I'm looking at Measure G, right? I'm looking at what the voters voted, and I'm looking at where we're at right now, which is if we have a resignation or a vacancy, and we've had 3, which is the reason that I am here, because the commission had already 3. You must select a replacement from the pool, and we cannot do anything about that pool. We cannot do anything about that pool, and that pool was criticized for its lack of racial diversity, for its lack of other kinds of diversity. Cannot do anything. Hands are tied. We can only look at peeps who were in that initial pool. Then there's 2 other issues that come up in the language, right? Which the lawyers and the everymans are trying to parse here tonight. That is, appointees shall be based on experience, analytical skills, and ability to be impartial. And particularly since one candidate, who I do not know, Lupe Alvarez, had to come back and articulate that he was impartial based on things that he had said earlier, I am not certain that his impartiality is strong, right? Partly because of the wide experience he has had as a political actor in his community and in Santa Barbara County more generally. Measure G, as someone from public comment said, I can't remember who, Measure G is about getting politics or political actors out of the commission's work. We are the Citizens Redistricting, the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And for those reasons, although Mr. Alvarez has extraordinary background of experience in meeting the needs of his city and community, I'm struggling with impartiality on this one. Why choose a political actor when we have other candidates who are not political actors? And those 3 things, experience, analytical skills, and ability to be impartial, are the top tier of things selection is supposed to be in. Next tier of things, diversity, which includes racial, ethnic, geographic, age, and gender diversity. And it's not just racial or ethnicity, it's age and gender as well, that the 45 initial pool has made our work more difficult. Finally, the third thing is proportionality, political proportionality, which takes up more of that paragraph, section 4H3 of the measure, takes up more than any other of these, things, including ability to be impartial. It takes up more space. And it is in those sentences where I see we should consider, meaning the commissioners should consider political party preference. And it says we should have a commission that shall be as proportional as possible to the percentage of voters who are registered with each political party. As proportional as possible. And the only way you get there is you select another Democrat, right, from the original pool, right? That's the way you get to the shall be that is in section 4H3 of the measure. And that's why I moved for KSF, and that's why I will be voting for KSF.
Thank you. Commissioner Trotsky.
Thank you. I am concerned about Kevin Kasich because he already resigned once from his, he withdrew his application. And I really would like to get on with the business of the commission and what we're here to do, which isn't to have these endless interviews. I don't feel he has the commitment based on his conduct to date. And in terms of Mr. Alvarez and his 2010 article in the paper, I mean, the application reaches back 8 years. They asked us to reach back 8 years to find if we had made any kind of donation or anything like that. We're now going to disqualify a very qualified candidate that represents an important sector of our community and our county that feels like they have no voice. And because we're reaching back almost over 11 years. And I think that's unfair. It's all this, you know, Lupe Alvarez, we think you're wonderful, we think you're great, you're qualified, but, and that just seems to be the classic response to someone like Mr. Alvarez. Thank you, but, you know, no thanks. And I just think it's really unfortunate.
Discussion. Anybody else, or are we ready for a vote? Not seeing any more hands come up. Ms. Tilton, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Would you please call the roll?
Yes, and do we want to repeat the motion is to appoint Kevin Kasich to the vacancy in the 3rd district? Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Trotsky?
No.
Commissioner Twibell?
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock?
Aye.
Commissioner Turley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bray?
Aye.
Commissioner Ochoa?
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Commissioner Rios?
Aye.
Commissioner Adams? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Adams, could you unmute and do that verbally?
Aye. Forgive me.
Chair Morris?
Aye.
Motion carries. 9-2. 8-2.
Very well.
8-2.
So if we could, since Ms. Alexander has been patiently waiting with us, if we could invite Mr. Kasich back and turn some time over to Ms. Alexander for his swearing in. Following that, Commissioners, it's my intent that we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break, and then we will come back to finish the rest of this evening's agenda. So, Ms. Alexander, welcome back.
Good evening, Chair Morris and members of the Commission. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to Kevin Kasich. And I will be administering your oath this evening. And if you can please entertain me, and if you could stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. My apologies. I know it's a little awkward on Zoom.
That's all right.
And
Let's see if I can make this work.
Great. Yes. Thank you. Perfect. I, Kevin Kasich, do solemnly swear
I, Kevin Kasich, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I'll support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I'll bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations, Mr. Kasich.
Thank
And
you.
I would just like to note, please be on the lookout for an email. I will be sending you a oath electronically to sign and just send back to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck with the rest of your meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Mr. Kasich, welcome. Okay, folks, by my clock, I have 8:11. We're going to take, let's try and keep this one quick and be back as close to 8:15 as we can. We do have a couple of additional items to work through this evening. So back in 4. Yeah. Welcome everybody back again for our restarting our meeting. Our next agenda item is our next training in session. Tonight we'll be focusing on our outreach materials and commissioner communication as we begin to turn our efforts externally in sharing information about the redistricting process. Ms. Tilton, are you or Vice Chair Turley leading us off? Who's kicking this off for us tonight?
Well, I can start us off, and then I can ask Vice Chair Turley if she'd like to add any information. We're joined here with Ryder Smith from Tri-Peppy Smith, and also I believe is Gerald with us.
Gerald's here, yes.
We have Gerald.
Yes, I saw here as well. I can see him.
Gerald Madrid from Tri-Peppy Smith is also here with us. As you all know, they are part of our public engagement and outreach firm that have been working diligently with the outreach committee to develop these materials. So what we have to present tonight are our website that we'll be launching, and I'm going to be deferring to our committee more about when that's going to be launching. And then we'll be showing you the content of it. There are still some tweaks that will be made as we move along and some additions that will be made as we move along, but we do want to show you what that's going to be looking like. And then we have the introduction PowerPoint presentation that we'll be using for our initial public outreach meetings. And part of the training will be going through that presentation. Doug Johnson and myself will be doing that to get you all familiar with how the PowerPoint presentations, what they look like, and how they'll be managed, and some terminology to be used when we are conducting these public outreach meetings. So I think Vice Chair Turley, did you have anything you wanted to add before we start to take a look at the website and then the PowerPoint presentation?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And
Did
anything
anyone else on the subcommittee like to say anything?
I just wanted to add that there will be some portions that you all will see that are not translated yet, but that is something that we are in the works and discussing. But we'll touch base on that after public comment.
Okay. And then also what I failed to mention is we have a video, and I'm going to, I don't have that link to that to share my screen, but we will have, I think one of our Tri-Peppy Smith team will be able to share the video presentation as well. Okay. And then do we have anyone from Tri-Peppy who wants to make any comments or anything before we start looking at the PowerPoint?
I'll just thank the subcommittee for their active involvement and very helpful feedback in the process. It's great to have on the ground feedback. That's the whole point of having a commission like this. So thank you for fulfilling the mission.
Right. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we will have our first look at what the website is going to look like. And it's my understanding that we will be having a new website URL that we'll be publicizing. So where you see where we have the old URL, just know that it will be substituted out if it has not been already. And let's see, since we did go on break, I'm going to have to ask Dr. Phillips to allow me to share the screen. Let's see. Okay, we're good here. Okay, are you able to see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So across the top, we have the various features of the web page. We start out with our welcome feature, and keep in mind that the legislation requires that we have certain content in our website that does a couple of things to help engage the public. And also this website must remain live for 10 years so that anyone be able to refer back to it and be able to follow the process, understood what happened, and then of course look forward to after 10 years when we be doing this process again. It's kind of hard to do this from my screen because part of it is covered. Let's see if I can shrink this up a little bit. So we have the welcome page where we land, and here's where we're giving the general description of what redistricting is and how the public can participate in helping to shape the future of Santa Barbara County's future. And here is where we ask people to get involved and to share their thoughts, drawing a map or attending public hearings. And these will be links to the other pages within this document. We also, if you recall, one of our earlier presentations, and it was from Dr. Phillips, who showed us the Santa Barbara's geographic story map. Story map is an online Santa Barbara geography map where you can zoom in and out more closely, and overlay maps so you can see different political boundaries overlaid, different types of geography maps overlaid, and you can turn on various layers for whatever you wish to see. And it will also have the population data in that, so that folks that are looking to draw maps can zoom in closely to the area that they're interested in. On this welcome page, we just gave some general background about Measure G that formed the 11 commission process. And here's where we have kind of our also our documents about the bylaws, the ordinance, our conflict of interest codes, and our ex parte communications. The next tab is our public meetings and schedules. So this will be populated now that we will be moving to our public outreach meetings. We will start to put on the schedule of all of the meetings that are going to be held throughout the various districts. It's in the agenda packet for those who are interested. In the last page is the schedule that we approved at the last meeting, and we are still confirming the locations for that. So all of that will be populated on this page. And again, we have information for language interpretation. We will have the commissioner biographies under here. And this may be moved to a different spot under welcome. But for now, it's a subset of this public meetings, where we could show the different biographies, and the FAQs, it also refers back to this page. This page will be where our draft maps will be posted. And so as you recall from previous trainings, anytime a member of the public submits a draft map, it will be professionally produced by NDC. All maps will look very consistent and very much the same format. They'll all be accompanied with a demographic summary of each of the districts that have been drawn. Once we have the tools live, folks will go here to draw a map. Under draw a map, we have here just the basic instructions on the various ways that folks can participate in drawing maps. And as we have spoken to before, the map tools are designed to meet different levels of technical skill and interest. So we start with the very basic paper maps. If you want to take the paper maps and get a little bit more upgraded, you can do the paper maps with the Excel spreadsheet, and it will help you calculate some of the population totals and the citizen voting age population totals. And then we have District R, which, as you recall from past demonstrations, is a more simple online neighborhood drawing tool. And then we have the most powerful tool, which will be our Calipers Maptitude online redistricting mapping tool. And these will be activated with hyperlinks that will lead the public directly to these tools. So as the tools are getting built out, they will become part of this page, and this is how folks will access the tools. And then we will have the interactive map review. The interactive map review works similar to Google Map. So, and we will have various overlays that can be activated that show different political boundaries, of course, the cities, the census designated places, and other information on this map. And then once the draft maps become submitted and produced, they will also appear on this interactive map review. So the neat thing about it is you can actually overlay two different maps and compare the two. So this is our draw a map page. Then we have our frequently asked questions. And this page is designed, we can continue to add to it. And many of these answers have links that lead you to other pages where you want to get more information. We have some just general resources that's very useful. And this also leads back to our bylaws, our ex parte discussions. And then the subscribe. So if folks can subscribe to get information whenever we have a meeting or whenever we update information about on our website, they'll be automatically sent an email. This page also includes our suggested outreach list for the organizations that we choose to contact. And then just the typical contact page. So that gives you a quick overview of the website. It will become more robust as it goes on and we start to get populated with our draft maps and the drawing tools become a live link comes to those. So any questions on the website? Yeah, I see. Commissioner Gray.
Yeah, jump in on this, folks. This is a training, so we'll be a little more informal.
Did you want to go ahead, Commissioner Bray? Do you want to go first? Okay. I did have a question, Shalice, about the paper maps that are submitted. What is the plan for organizing those? I mean, we may get all kinds of paper documents or documents that are attended by various iterations of paper, mapping and suggestions and bits of maps. What is the current plan for indexing or putting those into order?
Okay, so the paper maps are treated in the same fashion as an online map that's drawn with the most professional tool. So even if it's someone took a Chamber of Commerce map and mapped out the districts, NDC produces that in the same format as every other map. And we also produce the demographic summary. So it will not be obvious to the end user, to the general public who's just looking at the maps, how they were submitted, whether they were submitted in paper map form or not. What will be obvious is if someone just draws one district, which we actually encourage, and we'll produce that too. However, the map will just show the one district.
Thank you.
Mr. Bray?
Thank you, Ms. Tolton. I know we discussed this in the subcommittee meeting, and I'm not quite clear on how this works, but if somebody's bookmarked the old website and they go to the old website, are they automatically going to be transferred to the new website?
I know that that question was raised, and I believe the answer was that they were, yes, going to make that happen. Is there someone from Tri-Pepe that has a more definitive answer than that?
So at the risk of, since I'm 20 years senior to Gerald on this, and it's a tech question, he may want to correct me on it, but my understanding is we were going to put some text at the top of that page on the county page saying all this content is actually moved for the current status of information, please go here. And there'd be a big link with a clear indication that they were supposed to go that. I'm not sure if they were going to have an auto redirect that would take them off that and take them to the next page. But Gerald, you may correct me if I'm wrong, or you can all assume silence means I'm right.
Oh, no, Ryder, you're correct on that.
And can I just ask, is the issue that you can't redirect from one domain to another? So we're going from a county website to a separate, different website, so we can't redirect?
Technically, that is one concern. Yeah, and frankly, your browsers may not be happy about it because it could be viewed as a hacking attack effectively, because you think you're going to one URL, then it's like, oh no, we're going to send you over here. So frankly, we're better off just saying at the top of the page, hey, if you want this content, it's actually living here these days. And it'll be very clear, I suspect, at the top of that county page. I should also just note real quick, by the way, in case any of you are being super slews, that Shalise had shared the website. There is actually a username password protection on it right now. So if you're trying to copy the URL that was on there and get to it and it's airing out, it's because it's still not live yet.
Thank you.
So if I may just, yeah, thank you. I'd just like to follow up on Commissioner Bradley's question earlier on how these paper maps are treated and indexed. I'd like to make the suggestion that those maps are scanned and made publicly available so that they can be compared to the maps that are ultimately generated by NDC. Just because I think we want to avoid the perception that perhaps there was, errors in translation from paper maps to digital. So when ultimately we're looking at those digital maps, we know we can look back at the hand-drawn map and make sure that they're well represented.
Yeah, so we do keep all of the submissions for that purpose. We do keep all of those maps.
Great, and so those maps will then be those paper maps will be scanned and presented on the website.
We typically don't present those on the website just to keep it cleaner and all things equal. Doug, did you want to weigh in on that?
Well, there's two things. We typically don't put them in the map section of the website, but we do keep them in the public comment section, because often if someone's hand drawing a map, they're almost always writing a note with it too. Mm-hmm. And so that would get it, that would put it in the public comment history. Certainly.
Great, thank you.
So, Cheryl?
Commissioner Adams is speaking. We can't hear her.
Are we on the English channel or?
I just had a quick question about the email address or the email. Who would be monitoring that if someone does respond, and writes a letter or writes a note?
So I think we had decided we were going to keep our email with county, right? If I'm correct, because that was one concern I had brought up. If we had a Gmail, how would we guide people there and monitor both at the same time? But I could be wrong. I don't know if Terry Pepe or the other two subcommittee members.
So Commissioner Riss, I think we maybe have, I think there's two questions here. One, and Mr. Trotsky, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're asking is the form on the website that allows people to submit a question or a communication. You're asking who's monitoring that and responding. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah. And then Commissioner Rios, I think you're correct. There's also a separate issue of official email addresses for the commissioners, which we can talk about separately. But let's go back to Commissioner Trotsky's original question of who's monitoring the help me, form on the website.
It's my understanding that the county had requested it remain the same, and largely for Public Records Act requests, so that they could maintain that, and the email would remain the same, and they would be forwarding them to us. And pardon me if that information changed since my last update, but that is my understanding, that the county wanted to have that remain the same for the purposes of Public Records Act requests.
So Shalise, just to be clear, somebody goes on that form, types in a question, it will be received by the county, for record keeping purposes, and they will forward it to NDC for processing and response. Is that the process that we will follow?
Mm-hmm.
So who responds to the email?
NDC will be responding. So it will be presented mostly, it will be similar to what we do now. So there will be public comments that will be submitted. There'll be public comments submitted on maps. There will be a public comment listing on the web page that lists all of those comments. But occasionally we'll get questions asked about how, how do you use a particular tool, or someone that's having difficulty submitting a map, or those types of things. And those will be the things we will be responding to.
I think.
So again, for further clarification, members of the public shouldn't expect that forum will lead to an interactive dialogue with a member of the staff or a member of the commission, but it will be entered into the record and will be addressed in future agenda items. Is that accurate?
We're able to respond if someone is having difficulty submitting a map. We will contact them. If they're just commenting in general on a particular map, or in general on a community of interest, or something they'd like to see incorporated in a map, that will be treated as public comment.
I believe Commissioner Adams had a comment, but her mic is not working.
Mr. Adams, while you work on that, does anybody else have any other questions about the website? If not, maybe we can move on to the next tool that we're going to cover tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Adams, are you on the English channel? Okay, we can see your mouth moving, but unfortunately, let's go ahead and let's go to the presentation. And Doug, did you want to do this jointly with me, or want me to go ahead and make the presentation, or do you want to, I can share the screen with the presentation?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and before we get there, Commissioner Adams, oh, never mind. I thought she had messaged me directly, but she is asking, will website pages be bilingual?
Yes, the website pages will be bilingual. And we are working with the county staff as well as TriPeppy to make that happen. So Ryder, do you have an update on that portion?
Well, I want to also just before I answer that question, I want to note that there is, and I realize it's not a perfect solution, but Google Translate is also integrated to the site. So any text, so not imagery or words that are made out of art, but any actual text on the page will be translated used into any number of languages that are available from Google Translate, right? So that gets us beyond Spanish, certainly. I do not have an update on the status of the translation of the English that's on there now into Spanish and how that's represented. Partly, I think part of it is we need to firm up the finalization of all the language so we can do one translation once. Otherwise, you face this constant battle of translate the English to Spanish, and then you've changed the English, and now you're back changing the Spanish again. So we just want to finalize once and be done.
And then the second question was the response to citizen emails. Can it be more robust? She says, I worry about the county to NDC handoff about questions and citizens getting a response.
I think that's a valid suggestion that we can work with TriPeppy on, and maybe have two different categories so that folks are submitting comments specifically for maps and then other inquiries. Or, but yes, that is something let's work on to make sure that we don't. I would rather not have to go through the third hand and get them directly, and it can be.
Actually, so let me step in there a little bit, because the reason for the going through the county is as you mentioned earlier, is the Public Records Act process that the county has. So there's it's a fairly risky to get it outside of that. As the commission knows, we've already been through a lot of public records act requests, and county council's preference is they've weighed in pretty strongly, saying let's keep things coming through there so that they can have them in their official public records process. So we can work on it, actually saying how we react to them in different manners, but I don't think we're going to get away from it coming through the county.
Yeah, I believe the question, or the heart of the question, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Adams, was specifically around being able to have more of a dialogue and respond quickly and effectively.
Mhm.
Can you guys hear me yet?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh,
In the distance, it's not loud.
yeah, that's because I gave up my iPods, which seem not to be working anymore. So I'm just using computer. Yeah, you had that about right, Commissioner Turley, that, you know, that handoff sounds like an opportunity, not just about maps, but about anything, that this welcoming website, this, you know, this thing that's supposed to get us in touch with citizens, that any question a citizen might have fall through the cracks, not get responded to based on these handoffs. Another question is, this is a little, you know, scary to think about, but should each commissioner be getting some kind of handoff about, you know, emails from citizens? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, do you want legal counsel to chat? Yeah, thanks.
I do have something to share with that in terms of the bylaws themselves talk about that copies of all written and electronic materials received by a commissioner regarding commission business shall be forwarded to the county redistricting email for distribution to all of the commissioners. And then correspondence shall be posted to the county's redistricting website for the public unless the sender specifically requests otherwise. So there is supposed to be a centralization of all of these communications, and also not just into the individual commissioner, but then disseminated to all of the commissioners.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready to move on with the presentation?
I just had one additional thought with that, which is that I think that one of the ways that we can get the handoff out of it and have it just be an email that we all receive would be to create something like a listserv where it's an email on the website and that email gets sent to every single one of us. And so we're notified when public comment comes in, NDC is notified, our legal counsel is notified, the county is notified, but it's one single email address so that the public doesn't need to email all of us, but we're all aware that it's happening.
So like a digest, a weekly digest or something of content coming in.
No, this is particularly a listserv is basically we're all subscribed to the email address, and then when an email goes out, we just get the email as though it's a copy.
I'm thinking about public comment and how NDC Shalice offers us a digest of all of the public comment that came in up to 5 p.m. today, let's say, and whether or not that would be a feature of a listserv. Tech is so hard to talk about when you don't know the lingo, when you don't know whether you're using the right lingo.
So Megan, I do think that your idea of an auto broadcaster would work but I think we'd have to have some very clear understanding and guidelines about who responds to those, right? Because the last thing we would want would be for all of us to get it and then all of us start responding in some regard, right? And I think later this evening, we're going to talk a little bit more about, you know, that kind of two-way communication as we go out on this stuff. But I think staff probably has heard the concern, and and have made a good note that they need to go back to the county and see if there's a way to strengthen that communication loop.
Exactly. Yeah.
Look, thanks for raising that. That's a good point.
Yeah, Chair Morris, forgive me, but if I can ask one question. So there's two approaches, and this is a question for the commissioners. Shalice, can you stop sharing, please, for a second? So the question is, if we automatically forward all the messages to the commissioners, we technically can certainly do that. The challenge is that you will very carefully have to check the send of every message you get, because if you get it from the listserv forwarding, then you shouldn't respond. But if you get it directly, you have to send that back to us so we can share it with the rest of the commission. So, and if you miss one of those messages, you'll be in trouble. if something comes to you directly and you don't forward it back to the rest of the commission. So that's a trade-off that I don't know how comfortable the commission is with each commissioner being responsible for that versus something coming through us that we forward to everybody.
So Doug, I think you've heard our concern on this, and now I think we trust you and the county staff to go back and figure it out.
Okay.
Commissioner Trotsky, you had your hand raised. Did you have something before we moved on?
Just to say that it sounds overwhelming. You know, if I start getting emails from everyone in the county, that's, you know, my concern was that if there was a citizen that was using that email address, that who's responding to it. And it sounds like NDC has someone appointed to do that, to monitor that website, because I think it would be an overwhelming task for each of us to get all those emails.
And yeah, just Commissioner Trotsky, I think that's exactly what I'm hearing is NDC staff are the primary responders, and you know, then they determine whether that comes in as public comment that we get in the form, you know, during our meetings, or if it's a technical response from somebody saying, I'm trying to upload and it's not working, help me. You know, they can triage those and respond appropriately without you know, this massive loop, feedback loop that could develop otherwise.
That's typically.
Okay.
What's done.
All right, back to the presentation.
All right.
Kate was trying to say something, I think.
Trotsky to know that I am not in favor of more emails in my inbox, you know, as a general thing.
Understood.
Okay, we're ready. So the way we're going to approach this tonight is to actually, I'll be giving a presentation, and we'll consider this similar to a workshop setting. So our goal of this presentation is to engage, educate, and empower all of you to have a say in the redistricting process. We hope to answer questions about what is redistricting, why does it matter, who draws the lines, the rules for drawing the lines and defining communities, and how you can directly impact how the county supervisorial district lines are drawn. What is redistricting? Every 10 years, since the data are used to redraw the election lines, district boundaries for federal, state, county, and other local elected offices are redrawn to reflect the new population data and the shifting populations. And then these new election lines will determine which communities are placed in each supervisorial district. And then voters within those districts will elect one of their own to serve as county supervisor. So if I get the question, why should I get involved? Well, sharing your unique point of view will help ensure that our diverse communities are fairly represented. We have some quotes from the Brennan Center for Justice, and also some quotes from MALDEF. I just want to read one of them because it really does capture why communities should get involved. Our representatives in local, state, and federal government set the rules by which we live. In ways large and small, they affect taxes we pay, the food we eat, the air we breathe, the ways in which we make each other safer and more secure. Periodically, we hold elections to make sure that these representatives continue to listen to us. The way the voters are grouped into districts, therefore, has enormous influence on who our representatives are and what policies they fight for. So what does redistricting look like? So the first step is community input via public hearings, workshops, and public mapping tools. And then in those workshops, we will provide analysis of the most recent census data and other data. And then we will have a review of all the maps, and we want input on these maps, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Who draws the lines? In 2018, the Santa Barbara County voters approved Measure G, creating the Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission. And that redistricting commission requires an independent commission to be independent, transparent, and nonpartisan, and create the opportunity for everyone to be heard. Here are the members of our commission. We just recently filled our 3rd district with Commissioner Kevin Kasich, and we're looking forward to getting photos from both Commissioner Kasich and Kate Adams. So what does it look like to engage our residents? In the specific ordinance that was a result of Measure G, there's extensive public outreach, and we will be having 7 hearings before the maps are even drawn. And at these hearings, we want residents to define their communities of interest. And then the residents will actually start drawing initial maps with the tools that will be provided and are provided through the city's website. And then after the maps are submitted, they'll be professionally produced by the city's demographer. And then we'll have feedback on the maps. What makes sense? What do you like about these maps? Which maps could be revised? Sometimes we hear feedback on how to combine maps so that we will have, maybe someone will say, hey, we like the way that this eastern part of the county is drawn, and we want to combine it with this other map that has treated the northern part of the county in a different way. So we'll have 7 hearings to gather feedback on the drafts. Ultimately, we'll be adopting a map by December 15th. In drawing the maps, we have to draw the maps in accordance with federal, state, county law, and the commission must draw the lines pursuant to the following criteria. And it is important to know that these criteria is listed in the order of priority. So first we have our federal laws. We must have equal population, and that population will be based on the 2020 census data. We expect to have that data, the raw data that we'll be able to use in drawing the lines, will be released by the Bureau on August 16th. And then the state must take those population numbers and adjust them based on where state incarcerated prisoners are located to their home addresses. So after we get the prisoner adjusted numbers from the state, they're expecting that to take about 6 weeks, we will have the final numbers. So that's the first rule, is that each of the district must have equal population. So we'll take the total population for the county and divide it by by 5, and that will be, we must have equal population within a reasonable balance. So there can be a 10% deviation between the highest populated district and the lowest populated district. Then we must follow the Voting Rights Act, meaning that we must not draw the district boundaries in a way that would dilute the voting power of our protected class groups. And we can have no racial gerrymandering, meaning that race cannot be the dominant or the controlling factor in drawing the districts. Instead, we will be wanting to look towards common factors such as, is there a community that has shared characteristics such as a shared culture, language spoken at home, certain neighborhood boundaries that maybe a particular race fits into those communities and that is defined by those communities and not solely based on race. The state law requires and Measure G have requirements we must follow. The first, the California Voting Rights Act. Second, geographical contiguity. A district should have one border And areas that are separated by waters need to be connected by bridges, tunnels, or regular ferry service, or areas of a district that meet only at adjoining corners, or the points of corners would not be contiguous. So if you could picture a single district that was drawn as a figure 8, that would mean you would have corners, and that makes that district be non-contiguous. The next important factor is undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest. So communities of interest are going to be very important for us when we're drawing these factors, and we're going to want to hear from the public on what defines your neighborhoods and what defines your communities of interest, so that we can make sure they are not divided in the process. And some of the things that we look at when we're talking about communities of interest are things like shared interests in schools, housing, community safety, health conditions, land use. Sometimes there are communities that have shared social and civic networks, such as churches or homeowners associations, those types of things. The next factor that we must consider are easily identified boundaries. So we want to follow man-made and natural boundaries where possible, such as freeway boundaries, major streets. If there's significant waterways, sometimes railroads will be an identifiable boundary. And then we're looking at compactness. So make sure we do not bypass one neighborhood to get to another when we're looking at compactness. And then topography, geography, and cohesiveness. We'll be looking at cities. I'm sorry, I missed the undivided cities and designated places. That was number 4. So certainly when you do a county, we want to follow the city boundaries as much as possible, and the census designated places as much as possible. And then there's other traditional redistricting principles that we can consider after we've met the prioritized criteria, such as future population growth. If there's known future population growth in a particular area, perhaps that district gets we underpopulate that district within the 10% allowable deviation. So maybe it's slightly underpopulated because we know there's a future growth that will be happening very soon in that area. Another thing we want to consider is minimizing voters shifting to different election years. Once we draw each of the districts will be assigned either a 2022 year or a 2024 year. And if someone was in a previous district and they're expecting to be able to vote in 2022 because the last time they voted was in 2020, and then we assign them to a different year, and then all of a sudden there's nothing on their ballot because they've been assigned into a different district with a different election sequence. So we want to look at minimizing that as much as possible. There's a very...
I've got a couple of questions, and Norman Bradley has beat me to the English teacher punch. There's some small edits that need to be made to this slide. You want to know about those now?
Yeah, perhaps we could have you submit them to
the comments.
Or actually, if you
well, let me just say, these still need a final grammar review, so don't worry about editing small grammar things. But today is more about the substance and the big picture.
And something you've noticed that we may not notice, if you want to go ahead and shoot me an email, I can make sure it gets to.
Minimized voters shifted to different election years. That's really about shifting districts and therefore changing ballots, right?
If a current voter is in an election year and they're expecting to vote in 2022, because the last time they voted was 4 years ago, and they're expecting to vote in 2022. Well, now we've changed the boundaries enough so that now they are in a different district and it's assigned to a 2024. So we're trying to minimize that and minimize the number of voters that are shifted so it doesn't go 6 years since the last time they voted.
Okay.
And then in addition, the commission is specifically prohibited from considering the residence of any incumbent or political candidate, and the district shall not be drawn for purposes of favoring or discriminating against any incumbent political candidate or political party. So all of these things that we will be reminding the public as they're drawing the maps to consider this listed order of priority when they're drawing their maps. And for that reason, we encourage those who are drawing maps to give a narrative or a summary of why they drew the maps the way they did. Specifically helpful is if they identify the communities of interest and explain what the communities of interest they had in mind when they were drawing the maps. And when we talk about communities of interest, those are contiguous populations that share common social and economic interests that should be kept within a single district for purposes of its fair and representative representation. So it always gets a little, we get many questions about what are communities of interest. And as I mentioned, it could be a number of things. It could be shared political boundaries, as I mentioned, cities, if there are certain districts, school districts, fire districts, community college districts, those could be a community of interest. Similar socioeconomic status, including income, home ownership, education levels, cultural identities, language spoken at home, and other things that maybe communities come together because there's a legislative issue that they're working on, maybe fire protection or water erosion, those types of things, anything that brings a community together. And that's what we're really trying to get to the public to provide public testimony on during these hearings, is to let us know what are their communities, what's important to them, what groups them together and aligns them with other people in geographically adjacent areas. So we're asking, what defines your community? Is it an area around a community center, a park or a certain facility? Or, is it between two major roads, or is there some other kind of a definition or a division that divides a neighborhood or aligns a neighborhood? And we specifically want to know what those geographic borders are. What are the shared concerns? What are the demographics that tie them together? And how is that community impacted by county policy? That helps us to also to learn the story of the communities. So the ways that the public can participate is by, as I mentioned, describing their community, and they can either do that. We encourage them to do that through a map. It's not necessary to do it through a map. We are encouraging people to provide their input through the website by submitting, even if they want to do a narrative on where they believe their communities are and what should be kept together. We also want to hear if there's a community that would benefit from having being in two separate districts. So having multiple representation from two different supervisors. And then we're encouraging, we want to encourage everyone to consider drawing a map of whatever your technical or ability is, to either use the paper map, which is simple, and you can use the map that we will provide, which will have some population numbers to make it easier, or just any map of the county that someone can draw a map and submit it. We will professionally produce it. But we're hoping that those that are a little bit more technically astute will consider using the online mapping tool, and it's possible to submit more than one map. And the thing to know is that the public can start drawing maps very soon. We will have, as soon as the map drawing tools are available, we will also have estimated population data that the public will be able to use to draw those maps, and that they will be able to see all of the citizen voting age population figures that will be used in our ultimate map, so that they can look and see how good of a job their map does at keeping neighborhoods together, at either by the various factors that will be supplied in the demographic summary, such as, as I mentioned, language spoken at home. If you draw a district where you believe that there's mostly Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, and you can use the demographic summary to see, okay, this is my particular district that I know that has a large community of where Spanish is the predominant language, and you can see the percentage of Spanish speakers in that language by using some of the demographic information. And that's just one example of drawing the maps and being able to use the tools to help draw and submit the maps. And once they're submitted, as I mentioned, NDC will produce all of them. They'll all look uniform and will be posted on the website. Another way is to provide your directly to the commission through the website. More information is on the website at drawsantabarbaracounty.org. And we're encouraged the public to participate in more than one meeting, to participate in both the pre-map and the post-map meetings. On the website will be a schedule where the meetings are. There will be one meeting held in each district before the maps are drawn, and then the meetings will be held at various times of the days and even on the weekends, so that everyone will meet everyone's schedules and everyone will have an opportunity to participate. And then we're also looking for information about community groups that would be interested or want more information on the redistricting process. And so we're asking for members of the public to forward to us that contact information so that we can reach out to those community groups. And we're happy to give presentations at small groups or large groups. We have a particular place on our website where we have public outreach to community organizations. And if you can check to see if the particular community organization that you're aware of is on that list. And if it's not, suggest it to us so that we can reach out to that community. And that completes the PowerPoint presentation. We do have talking points that have been drafted, and we'll refine those and get those out to you. Because I was sharing my screen, I didn't have the benefit of my notes because I had just the full screen open, but we'll have talking points that each of the commissioners will have. And the purpose of the talking points is just to give you a little bit more background on what you're speaking of. You don't necessarily need to speak to all of the talking points. We'll also post them on the website so the public can see those as well. But in case you're asked a deeper question, and so that you have just information all in one place. You don't have to go searching different places for, where do I find the criteria listed in the election law. That sometimes those questions come up, but there will typically be an NDC staff person, a Tri-Peppy Smith staff person with you, but maybe not at some of the smaller, social organizations that you go to speak to, but certainly you can take down the questions and we'll be happy to get back to anyone who's asked questions that you can answer. And with that, are there any questions?
So Shalisa, first of all, thank you. And to the team, our subcommittee and our friends at Tri-Peppy Smith, that obviously took a lot of work to get us to this point. And I think it's something we've all been anxious for. I'm gonna foreshadow what I think the main question you're going to get is. It's just, when do we get the file and the permission to start going out into the community and volunteering for the rubber chicken circuit.
Did someone from the committee or Tri-Peppy want to answer that? I mean, I know we have some mechanical and grammatical revisions to make, but that should be done in short order.
Unless we have something hugely material that, hang on. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unless we have some huge mechanical failure, I would expect within 48 hours that it would take to implement whatever modest changes have been requested by folks to get a PowerPoint deck ready.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Doug and then William.
I just wanted to point out, I thought this was really, really good. Thank you so much. And please pardon my nitpicky mechanical revisions. I just can't help myself as a writing instructor. I'm sure Commissioner Adams feels as I do. It's like Roger Rabbit and, shaving a haircut. We can't help ourselves. But I wanted to say, I think this is an excellent slide deck. I think it's a very good all-purpose type of talk that we can all go out on the road with, and we can put something together no matter the audience. And I hope it's also, I think Commissioner Rios mentioned earlier that this will be translated into Spanish as well. We'll have a Spanish version of that. But I just wanted to compliment you. I think it's very good.
Well,
so yeah, great. This is fantastic. Great work. Thank you very much for putting this together. I did have one question about, I guess that pertains to messaging, and maybe this is a question for the entire commission. And it pertains to the slide that addresses who draws the lines. And I can't recall if this issue has been decided upon, but I know there's been some discussion about the notion that commissioners themselves will not be drawing lines on the map. That was one recommendation from a speaker from, I think it was Arizona, that we would rely on members of the public to draw the lines, but that commissioners themselves wouldn't, to avoid any suggestion that we were biasing these proposals. So I guess I want to I don't know if this is the moment to do it, but I guess I'd like to have further discussion on whether or not that's actually a thing, whether we want to agree that we won't be drawing lines, and if that makes sense.
Well, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I actually brought this up while we were creating this slide deck. And initially I had requested that change go into this slide, but after review from NDC and our legal counsel, they determined that the most appropriate wording would be this wording. So I don't know if NDC or our legal counsel would like to comment more on that, but I just wanted to point that out.
I think Andrea had some input on this slide.
I think it's a great deal of the portion is timing. I think you're exactly right. And in fact, the first 7 meetings, you were not supposed to do that at all. I would like to turn to NDC, because there's a difference between drawing the lines and approving and the lines. So NDC, let's talk about that a little more.
Yeah, this is Doug. Let me jump in a little bit. So to Andrew's point, she's exactly right. Neither the commissioners nor NDC can draw any maps until the official census data are out. So no official draft maps can be put out. So until then, using this estimated census data that Shalise mentioned, it's only the residents submitting maps that will then be fine-tuned once we get the official data. When we get into the official draft maps and selecting map, I think this is all subject to your decision, but ideally, we'd have residents so invested that they would be responding to your comments and drawing maps. And in particular, at the beginning, you'll be reacting to what I hope will be a lot of public maps, even before we're allowed to draw anything. It does get to be a question of, as you go through the process and as the timeline gets tighter, what happens then? In an ideal world, you have a map that you love from the community that takes in all this input. It doesn't often happen, so you can direct us to, as Shalise is saying, take parts of 2 maps and put them together, because we can do that really quickly. There's no legal bar against commissioners themselves drawing maps. It does get a little touchy because it takes a lot of time to draw a map, and people get invested in their maps. And so where we run into problems is when commissioners come in invested in the time that they put into their map, and they start advocating for their map, and that gets very messy, because every map can always be improved. And so we need to be sure that people don't get invested. So certainly I would say commissioners feel free to hop on the tool and play around and look at different options. I think we'll have to have a more in-depth, well, I would suggest that the commission have a more in-depth discussion of exactly how you want to handle this down the road. But it won't become an issue until the official census data is out and we get past our 1 week waiting period where the public gets to fine tune their maps before we can draw anything. But yes, so we should, if this is a question you want to visit, we could certainly put that down as a topic for later on.
Do we want to change the title of this slide?
I mean, no, because it truly is at the very end of the day. That's exactly right. You are the Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission that is drawing the lines at the very end. But maybe it makes it too specific. Maybe we should think about different language.
I would advocate for that because I don't think of us as drawing the lines. I think of us as you know, shepherding the process that allows others to draw the line to meet various rules and objectives. So yeah, I'd like to think about different language you could use.
Could that, William, do you think that could be accomplished just with another bullet there that really calls out, and we will do that based on input from the public through a very, you know, iterative and comprehensive process? Does that kind of get to the message?
I think that may be it. I'm wondering if we can also say the commissioners themselves will not be drawing the lines to make it really clear that we're not here to advocate for a specific design.
That we're not creating some of the original source documents, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
What if instead of who draws the lines, we put who's in charge? And
yeah. Whose map is it? I mean, maybe that's it. It's it's yours. It's yours.
You know, the other, if you're looking to just change the header based on the content of that slide, maybe the header is just what is the commission?
Mm-hmm.
Who's this commission?
But it is a question. It is a question that probably people want to know. It's a good question, and maybe it's the wrong answer. You know, there should be 2 slides. Who's the commission and who is responsible for the final map?
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Ochoa, and then back to Doug.
Can we just bring this back to the original language of the Redistricting Commission, where this section may also be known as you draw the lines, and instead of saying who, say you, and because it's in the original language, and it might solve the problem.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So maybe this requires further discussion, but even if we don't put it on this slide, if somebody asks me, Commissioner, are you going to be drawing the lines on the map? I want to be able to have a definitive answer there and be able to say, no. And so are we in agreement that that's the case, that we won't be?
Can I jump in?
Please.
I think the idea of adding an extra slide is good. And I really like Commissioner Choa's idea. I think that also another thing we want to emphasize, besides the fact that it's the residents of the county, the voters and the participants of this process who are going to draw the lines. The other thing, though, I'd really like to see emphasized if we do add an extra slide is these lines should be drawn in an affirming way. I really fear, one of my worst fears about this whole process is that people are going to draw lines based on what they're not, who they don't want to be associated with. You know, we're not with those guys over there. We're not with these people over here. I would like to see us, to use Commissioner McClintock's word, shepherd. I think we should try to shepherd an affirming process where people define boundaries and communities of interest based on what they affirm and what they feel part of, not what they're against or who they're not with or who they don't want to be associated with. So I would like to see that kind of tonality added to this, just to help expedite the process and make it a more positive and productive and efficient process.
Any other feedback on this one?
Why don't we get together tomorrow morning? I know everyone is anxious to get this out, and get together tomorrow morning, and perhaps NDC and council, and see if we can't come up with an alternative, and maybe when and if you vote to approve this, it's in principle, and we'll try and get it to conform to the comments that have been presented here.
Sure. Anybody else have a comment on this one real quick?
Yeah, this is Kevin. I have just a quick question, a quick comment. Was the one question you were asking up on the top, who draws the lines? And the bullet point right below there discusses the commission. So it does come off with the wrong feeling that we're addressing it. It almost sounds like the commission is responsible for drawing the lines. That's my input for tonight.
Yep. No, I think you captured it well. So I think, yeah, I think to Andrea's point, I think we've made clear kind of the piece that we're a little uncomfortable with here. And I think our subcommittee and the folks with Trepepe Smith and NDC can further finesse this thing. Will, I don't know if we're going to get to a formal decision on your question, but my understanding all along has been where you are, which is I personally don't intend to submit maps, in the front end of the cycle, right? I think I see our role as gathering as many maps as we can gather from others, and not putting our thumb on the scale. And I take Doug's point to heart that I think if I spend a couple of hours, over or several hours over a couple of evenings drawing the perfect map, I'm going to fight for that map, right? And that's not my job in this cycle. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Commissioner Twyba, your hand's up.
I was looking at the slide engaging residents. So that slide, and then you draw the line. I think you need to combine those two. And then I think it might become clearer. Or you have the bios of the commission, then you can say what we are after that. I mean, maybe, I think if you see how it's numbered, like if you have the bio of the commission, and then you could say something like what we do. And then engaging residents, maybe it should be engaging residents, you draw the lines. And that would be, a way to show the residents what they're going to be doing, and that they will be drawing the lines. After the bios, you could show what we do. So we're not going to be drawing the lines, it could be a little clearer in that way.
Yeah, what we do, I like that as language for describing our work.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Shalice, you think you got those notes?
Yes, and I know Trepepe's team is taking notes.
Excellent. Okay. What else have we got to cover this evening on the outreach materials?
Are you ready to show the video, Gerald?
I think
I am showing the video.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
If
Commissioner
God willing,
also has
sharing video on Zoom is always a question mark, but we're going to give it a shot here. Let's live on the edge.
Commissioner Twyba, your hand's still raised. That's just from your previous. Yep. Just want to make sure we didn't miss you. Okay. Entertain us with a video.
All right. Give me 1 second here. It was a little. Go. Okay, that is there. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, somebody needs to empower me.
Dr. Phillips, can you allow Ryder Smith to share his screen?
Shalise, you're the host.
I think, Shalise, maybe you have to give me that power since you're currently the host. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Share sound. Okay. Well, team, apparently I need to restart my computer to finish sharing the proper permissions to do this. So that is unfortunate because I'm not going to restart on you, or you can move on to something else and I can restart and come back in 2 minutes.
All right, do we want to, Andrea and Sal, are you ready to do your portion about
Actually, while we're waiting on this, just quickly summarize the slides that you're going to receive and that are attached here are just some reminder guidance on public outreach meetings. And mainly it is in order to, we can scroll through a couple of them very quickly because we don't need to take that much time with it. But it is important to remember that these outreach activities, you will not be acting together as a commission. And so you are in the ex parte realm, and it is explicitly authorized by your commission's ordinance. You are permitted to do this, you're encouraged to do this. And nevertheless, we do have the requirement to have you report your outreach. So you must continue to use the existing system to disclose all of the ex parte communications during the meetings and on the online spreadsheet. And again, public outreach for this commission, fortunately, is to include information through media, social media, public service announcements, working with community organizations, obviously the website that we're talking about, and encouraging the interested citizens and community organizations to submit their proposed maps for review. So that's the most important part of it. But I wanted you to have this so that you would have your ordinances and you would the provisions about that and the various Brown Act provisions, so that you would have that somewhat as your own template without our doing it at the moment. And then recognizing at the very end that social media, we do have that special Brown Act provision, which authorizes commissioners to use social media to answer questions, provide information to the public, and solicit information from the public regarding commission business. But you are not supposed to respond directly to any social media post made by any of the other commissioners. Even a like or just a comment, it may appear to be doing commission business without the appropriate public involvement. So we don't want to have a meeting of commissioners through social media. So this will be just part of your cheat sheets of when you're out there for these public outreach.
And if I can tag on to that a little bit, kind of a key takeaway for this is all the things that Andrea was just showing, they all refer to providing information. So the key thing as you're going out is to be sharing information and take those forms and things with you, because the thing where you can get in trouble is if people share information with you and then you try to relay it on to the rest of the commission where you're interpreting their words. So we'll definitely have a community of interest form that you can take with you. And if someone wants to tell you about their community, hand them the form and have them write it down. Say, the commissioners want to hear your words, not my interpretation of your words. Because all that stuff that Andrea just read is all about you providing information. And then we have all these channels for how people can share it. So you can certainly have the forms with you, have them fill it out. You can bring it back and send it in for them. But just keep that in mind of trying to avoid you interpreting what they tell you.
In a case where somebody cannot fill out the form, what do we do? Just invite them to a public meeting where they can speak?
Certainly, if they can come to a meeting, that's the best, where the whole commission can hear from everybody. But what do you mean by can't?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, somebody's maybe illiterate, can't write. What do we do? Can't hand them a form to fill out.
Yeah, I mean, you could fill it out for them with talking to them as they're doing it, as long as it's their words you're putting down.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you've heard over and over, and each of you have said it, you're there to listen and to hear and to understand. But as much as possible, in order that what is being heard by all of you, is for them to submit either through that form or through their own letters, or for coming to the meetings to talk directly.
Commissioner Trotsky.
Andrew, thank you for that. Will we have a copy of your slide deck?
Yes, we're good. I think we can just, Shalice will just attach it to perhaps just to the minutes, and any way that you think is appropriate.
Yeah, we will post it on the website for the public, and then I can also distribute it directly to you, so you don't need to go to the website to retrieve it, but the public will have it. I'll send it out to you. And then as far as the outreach materials, Tribe Happy Smith is going to be the conduit for you for getting all the materials you need, the forms, the PowerPoint, access to the video, and the timeline when the website is live. They'll be coordinating all of that.
Very good.
I'm sorry, Ms. Tilton, just a quick question. Is the county going to be the clearing post? So, for instance, Commissioner Morris and I don't book the same meeting? Does that make sense?
No, just say it another time. I didn't hear it quite right.
Is there somebody going to be kind of a clearing house for these public presentations? For example, say Commissioner Morris and I don't book the same Rotary meeting. Who's the clearinghouse on this?
So that's likely going to be some combination of NDC and Tripepi Smith. So we haven't got that whole system nailed down yet, but yes, we'll certainly be coordinating, because we want to be sure that someone is responding to every group that asks for a commissioner to come speak. So we'll coordinate that, and we'll figure out a system for it, but we don't know it yet.
Thank you.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any luck with the video, or are we going to send a link out to that and review it offline?
So I was actually going to ask if it's okay if I could just share a link to you all real quick, and then you could watch it right now. Would that be acceptable?
Well, I don't know that. I think if we're trying to do it, it wouldn't get shared with the public in the same way. So what I would suggest is let's just post it with the meeting information, and then we can, send back comments just through the email system, through our feedback.
Okay, very well. My apologies for having the technical issue here. Permissions are permissions.
Indeed. Well, that's all right. We're all good. Okay, before we leave this item, well, Shalice, anything further that we wanted to unveil tonight?
Well, we still do have the closed session.
Yes, I'm sorry, on this outreach item, is there any additional materials that needed to be?
No, we will be making those changes to the PowerPoint, and then, like I said, we'll be communicating with each of the with the commission on how you can access these materials, and then we'll figure out a point person that's going to be helping to coordinate and post where all these meetings are going to be taking place.
Excellent. So while this isn't an action item, I think let's pause for just a moment, see if anybody in the public wants to make any comments about the website or PowerPoint presentation that we've shared. Any hands raised, Ms. Tilton?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, so we'll close that item up. I believe before we go to closed session, can we just, Shalisa, sorry to spring this on you, but do you happen to have the calendar of our next couple of meetings that you could put up on the screen really quickly?
I do.
You're getting better at anticipating these wild curveballs I throw at you.
I thought I did here. Looks like that was the last item on our agenda. Stand by. Okay, it's going to take me a minute to bring that up.
Okay.
Stand by.
While she's doing that, we're going to kind of bounce just a bit. Ms. Orton, can you announce the purpose of the closed session we're going to go to?
Yes, it is the status report on the pending lawsuit of the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture and Business versus Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors and the County of Santa Barbara Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission.
Okay.
And the firm is Stromwasser and Wucher.
Very good. Is there any public comment related to the closed session item before we go to closed session?
And I do not see any hands raised. Oh, I have a panelist hand raised, Commissioner Twibell, but I believe that.
I don't, do you know when the link was sent out to the closed session? I don't remember receiving it.
It was actually just sent out just prior to this meeting. So it was.
Okay. So we'll have it in our, okay.
Should be in your inbox.
Kevin won't have it though. Kevin will need it.
Okay.
Okay. So before we jump to the closed session, I just wanted to bring up our June, particularly if we could maybe scroll out just for the June dates there. And the reason I highlight these is just to make it clear to everyone that we're moving away from our kind of every other week cadence. And we'll be moving to random dates and times in order to begin to hit our public hearings and going out into the districts to begin the process of engaging with our community. Would point out and if for no one else's benefit other than maybe Mr. Kasif's, as you're looking at those schedules, the middle column there under quorum, if it says yes, that will be an official business meeting of the commission and part of our expectation of commissioners that we would have ideally everyone at those meetings. The sessions that say no are public hearings only, and we need some, but not all of our commissioners at those. And so those are more optional in terms of the number of commissioners that will be engaged. Certainly everyone is welcome, but it's not required that we have a full quorum in order to conduct those hearings. So you'll begin to notice, again, the Wednesdays are our default, but you'll see a Saturday morning, you're going to see a Friday afternoon there in early July and so forth as we move through those. So I wanted to just make sure that before we go to closed session, some of our friends in the public may not stick with us when we come back, and I wanted to make sure that they were aware that our pattern and cadence will change as we get deeper into the summer.
And the June 16th meeting will be virtual.
Okay, but not, the others are still yet to be determined, correct?
Correct. We're firming those up.
Very good. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to go to closed session. So commissioners, Mr. Kasich, we're going to shoot you an email if you didn't just receive one.
I
From
will.
staff with another link.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. So watch for it shortly as soon as just give me a few minutes.
However, don't lose this one because we'll need you to come back when we're done with that. So we're going to close out of this meeting briefly. We're going to start a new meeting for the closed session, get a briefing over there, and then we'll come back to wrap up our evening. Everybody good?
So I'm to wait for I'm going to leave this meeting and wait for an email to go to another meeting?
So Kate, you should have received an email from Shalise probably earlier today.
It was about 5 o'clock. It was late.
Is that the one for the Google?
It is a Google Meet.
Oh.
No, it may have a Google Meet. Don't use the. I'm sorry. I apologize if the standard format has a Google Meet link. Do not use that one. Use the Zoom link. I don't like that it does that. I usually try to delete it. But the title of the email says Zoom closed session.
Shalise, just for simplicity, could you just resend that to everyone right now?
Yeah, my email did not include a Zoom link.
So everybody look for an email coming to you right now from Shalise, and we'll reconvene over in our other meeting. This meeting will be in recess until we come back.
Okay. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I need to leave this meeting. So I think you need to take back being the host. If I end, then it's going to be problematic.
Yeah. So could you make me the host again?
You're going to have to help me with how to do that.
Or make me a co-host?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that.
Could you, do you see the 3 little dots at the top right of my screen?
Oh, I go to your individual screen. Okay.
Yes.
All
and
right.
then make me host.
Sorry, you keep jumping around as people are leaving.
That's fine. Okay, great. So now I'm the host again, and I will pause the recording and I'll play it again once people come back.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. We have started recording again. We'll call the meeting back to order. We have a quorum back in present. Ms. Orden, would you please report any actions taken in the closed session?
Yes, I can report, just as I said when we went into closed session, it was merely a status report on the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business versus Santa Barbara County et al., and there's no action to be reported.
Thank you very much. With that, commissioners, any items that you'd like to make sure get added to our next or a future agenda that have not already been discussed? Hearing none, we will stand adjourned this evening. See everybody back here on the 16th of June. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone.